Hello, and thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the history and story of The Little Mermaid. We are going to be comparing and contrasting the celebrated 1989 Disney version of the story along with its original incarnation penned by Hans Christian Andersen in 1836. Now, I saw The Little Mermaid in the theater with my younger sister and my grandparents, and I got to admit my takeaway from it at that time as a 9-year-old was relatively superficial. Shallow, you might say. We had princess, prince, ugly thing, and happily ever after. My focus was on Sebastian the Crab. I thought Sebastian was hilarious. He stole the show for me. That was my fixation as a kid. For weeks after I saw the movie, I was doing the whole, "You've got to poke up your lips like this" impression for friends and families, much to their chagrin. But that was pretty much my takeaway. Was just it was a fine movie. It was a fairy tale. It was a Disney movie. We were a Disney family. We love Disney movies. It was another great Disney movie. It wasn't until I was an adult, probably in my early 30s, I bought the DVD for posterity. I was just like, to have as part of a collection. Maybe my kids would watch it. Who knows? It's a good movie. It's a classic. Should have it in my collection. And I was like, you know what? I haven't watched this since I was like a kid. Let me watch it now as an adult and relive the magic. And it was a little bit different as an adult. It was actually significantly different watching it as an adult. And it almost felt like, I couldn't put my finger on it, but it felt like they took the premise of one story and the ending of another and kind of stuck them together, that it wasn't necessarily cohesive. And I really couldn't put my finger on why, but I didn't think about it too much until later on when I realized, I don't know about you guys, but for the longest time, I just thought Disney made all these stories, like just from scratch. They just kind of came up with these really cool, nifty stories. But we find out later that they're actually based on, loosely or very strictly, based on other stories written by other people and from other collections, the Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen in this case, and that Disney simply adapted them. And we know, at least from the Snow White, when we just recently did a video on the 1800 version Snow White versus the 1937, that the adaptation was more or less faithful to the work, pretty much from start to finish. Certain things were accented to give it a little bit more time. Other things were diminished. A few things were cut here and there, but on the whole, it was a pretty faithful adaptation. And I started to wonder, is The Little Mermaid, the movie, a faithful adaptation to the original story? Or are the discrepancies, the oddities that I was beginning to perceive as an adult, if those actually were more of a Disney thing, that was Disney taking the start of the premise of the story and then kind of going their own direction with it. Which is not to say there's anything wrong with that, but there are pretty significant differences. And come to find out, as we're going to see, there is a great deal of divergence. There's a lot of overlap, but there is a great deal of divergence as well. And so we're going to go ahead and look. We're going to read over the story. It's a lot longer than Snow White. Snow White is a fleeting glimpse compared to this thing. And you'll notice just from the very beginning, it's much more like Charles Dickens. Like we are going to set the setting. It's going to be very descriptive. It is, I would say, it's probably a fairy tale for a slightly older, hopefully older audience. It certainly would not pass in today's, with the attention span of children today. There's no way in heck. This is a much longer read, but we're going to be going through it, and as we hit certain points, referencing the Disney movie and comparing and contrasting as we go. So let's go ahead and jump in. It's going to be a long one. I don't know yet how long the video is going to be, but I guarantee you it's going to be a lot longer than the hour and a half that we had for Snow White. So let's jump in. Here we go. The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. And just to give you an idea right off the jump, there is a line in here where it says, "Water is blue as the prettiest cornflower." And that already kind of jolted me a little. I was like, what the heck are we talking about here? But just so you know, for your edification, this is what a cornflower looks like. So you think cornflower is cornflower, it's, yellow, or at least it should have something to do with corn, but no, that is what a cornflower looks like. So when it says the water is as blue as a cornflower, that is the imagery we are supposed to have in our heads. So here we go. Far out in the ocean, where the water is as blue as the prettiest cornflower and as clear as crystal, it is very, very deep. So deep, indeed, that no cable could fathom it. Many church steeples, piled up one upon the other, would not reach from the ground beneath to the surface of the water above. There dwell the Sea King and his subjects. We must not imagine that there is nothing at the bottom of the sea but bare yellow sand. No, indeed, the most singular flowers and plants grow there, the leaves and stems of which are so pliant that the slightest agitation of the water causes them to stir as if they had life. Fishes, both large and small, glide between the branches as birds fly among the trees here upon the land. In the deepest spot of all stands the castle of the Sea King. Its walls are built of coral, and the long Gothic windows are of the clearest amber. The roof is formed of shells that open and close as the water flows over them. Their appearance is very beautiful, for in each lies a glittering pearl, which would be fit for the diadem of a queen. Or diadem? Diadem. See, here's the thing. So, Charles Dickens, eat your heart out. Like, this is crazy. We're starting off a story with no character, no inciting action. This is just a big, long description of what it's like under the sea. You know, it's kind of crazy. And using words like Gothic and pliant. I mean, these aren't big words, but these are words that you wouldn't think. Like, he's using church steeples as a visual to indicate how far down this is, because I'm guessing there weren't many buildings that were taller than church steeples back in the 1800s, or if they were, a lot of kids that were in villages or towns wouldn't see them. So the highest point they can think of is a church steeple. And so he's using that. So you're going, okay, he's trying to describe this for a young mind, but yet he's using words and vocabulary that, do we really know? Were the kids that smart back then? My gosh, I don't know. For me, by context, I would say a diadem or diadem is like a circlet or a tiara or a necklace or something. So, it's a pearl. It should be for decoration for jewelry is my thought. I don't know why I didn't bother to look that up, but whatever. We're not gonna waste too much time with that. But just noticing very, very different already in terms of what it's expecting of the child, of this story to be aware of, to know in order to understand this, and the fact that we're not just jumping into the action. The Sea King had been a widower for many years, and his aged mother kept house for him. She was a very wise woman and exceedingly proud of her high birth. On that account, she wore 12 oysters on her tail, while others, also of high rank, were only allowed to wear 6. She was, however, deserving of very great praise, especially for her care of the little sea princesses, her granddaughters. They were 6 beautiful children, but the youngest was the prettiest of them all. Her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose leaf, and her eyes as blue as the deepest sea. But, like all the others, she had no feet, and her body ended in a fish's tail. All day long they played in the great halls of the castle, or among the living flowers that grew out of the walls. The large amber windows were open, and the fish swam in, just as the swallows fly into our houses when we open the windows, excepting that the fishes swam up to the princesses, ate out of their hands, and allowed themselves to be stroked. Outside of the castle there was a beautiful garden in which grew bright red and dark blue flowers and blossoms like flames of fire. The fruit glittered like gold, and the leaves and stems waved to and fro continually. The earth itself was the finest sand, but blue as the flame of burning sulfur. So we're not going to break all that down, but I think the big takeaway here is this is not a dungy, clammy, dark, under the sea thing. Disney did a great job when they showed the kingdom. Let's see, I can't remember if we get a nice. Oh yeah, we do. Yeah. So I mean, Disney's iteration of it does it justice. It's very much trying to show us this beautiful. Only a glimpse of what the beauty that is described here. But the point is, this is not a place that you'd want to get away from. This is not a place. She didn't grow up in the slums. This isn't, dark, scary stuff with, old, our version of castles back in those days. This was a glorious place. It sounds absolutely stunning and beautiful. And it's described to be that way. This is supposed to, I would say, make the readers almost going, I want to see under the sea, as much as, we're going to read that the princesses, including the little prince, Ariel, but also her sisters, longed to see, to experience the land above and to see it. And it was fascinating to them. And I think he's doing a very good job of bestowing that fascination on the readers, that we are supposed to long to visit that as well, just as he's trying to impart, because for us, especially if you're talking to a kid and you're trying to be like, isn't it amazing? We have birds and we have music. And it's like, yeah, we have birds. Like, we have that, like you take it for granted, but I think he's going out of his way to make this place seem like one where we'd go, oh, I want to go to there. And that the reader, mother, parents, whatever, could tell the kid, well, that's exactly how the Little Mermaid feels. Like, she wants to see it. It's just as strange to her as this is to us. Anyway, I think that's a really good deal. And like I said, I think Disney does a good job when they, in presenting it, they make it look glorious and wonderful to behold. Over everything lay a peculiar blue radiance, as if it were surrounded by the air from above, through which the blue sky shone instead of the dark depths of the sea. In calm weather, the sun could be seen looking like a purple flower. Not quite understanding that. Okay. You know what? When I first read this, I didn't understand it, but I guess purple because blue and yellow. No, blue and red make purple. Okay, I still don't understand how we have a purple flower. Maybe like cornflower, purple flower actually means blue flower or yellow flower. I don't know. Sunflower, maybe. Anyway, with the light streaming from the calyx. I have no clue what a calyx is. Each of the young princesses had a little plot of ground in the garden where she might dig and plant as she pleased. One arranged her flower bed into the form of a whale. Another thought it better to make hers like the figure of a little mermaid. But that of the youngest was round like the sun and contained flowers as red as his rays at sunset. She was a strange child, quiet and thoughtful, and while her sisters would be delighted with the wonderful things which they obtained from the wrecks of vessels, she cared for nothing but her pretty red flowers, like the sun, except a beautiful marble statue. It was the representation of a handsome boy carved out of pure white stone which had fallen to the bottom of the sea from a wreck. She planted by the statue a rose-colored weeping willow. It grew splendidly and very soon hung its fresh branches over the statue almost down to the blue sands. The shadow had a violet tint and waved to and fro like the branches. It seemed as if the crown of the tree and the root were at play and trying to kiss each other. Nothing gave her so much pleasure as to hear about the world above the sea. She made her old grandmother tell her all she knew of the ships and of the towns, the people and the animals. To her it seemed most wonderful and beautiful to hear that the flowers of the land should have fragrance, and not those below the sea, that the trees of the forest should be green, and that the fishes among the trees could sing so sweetly that it was quite a pleasure to hear them. Her grandmother called the little birds fishes, or she would not have understood, for she had never seen birds. Now, here we have some, I would say, not significant deviations, but some small stuff. She does not have what I'm going to call, I know unflattering as it sounds, Ariel has what could best be described as a hoarder's grotto that Sebastian sees here. It is filled with stuff. It is a secret little cave that she has hoarded. And again, I know that's not a flattering description, but that's really what it is. A collection. We'll call it a collection. Her grotto collection. I don't even know if a grotto can be fully submerged underwater. I guess it can be. Anyway, the bottom line is it's very different from what it's portrayed here. For there, it's an isolating thing. It's a secret cave in which she has compiled everything. And she makes it very clear, look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete? I've got who's and what's it's a plenty, gizmos and gadgets galore, but who cares? No big deal. I want more. That's why I call it, I think of it as hoarding, because it's not so much I'm collecting these things. It's a voracious need for more things. I want more things. And of course, she's not necessarily saying she wants more possessions. It's I'm not satisfied with glimpses of this other world. I want to experience it more, which isn't necessarily wrong, but the difference of her and her sisters having gardens planted nearby each other, in theory, they've all got their own little gardens. And they're all, it says that her sisters also collected bits of pieces from wreckage. And oddly enough, aside from the statue, she doesn't collect little trinkets. She's not into that. And I do find it fascinating. I can't remember if the handsome boy is supposed to be the prince. I don't think it is. But I do think it's a well done on Disney's end to kind of consolidate those two. You have this allusion to a statue in her garden, in her collection, and to make it then of the prince so that there's a little bit more of a connection there. I think that's well played. But like I said, I don't think in this story, I don't think that's not the prince that she falls in love with. It's just a statue, and she dotes on it to a degree. But it's interesting that her sisters are the ones that are collecting stuffs. And again, this is a communal thing. They all share that. The sisters also have a fascination with the surface. She's not the only one. It may be a little more fixated, but all of them are very curious and interested in what's going on above the waves. And the Little Mermaid is, like I said, is considered to be peculiar, that she has a little bit more fascination, but not social isolation. She doesn't go off into this little cave and spend her time daydreaming about a different life. She's gardening. She's with her sisters. They're out there and they're creating their own things, and it's out there for everyone to see. Then there's nothing wrong with it. You notice, I think it's Triton is his name. In the animated version, he's like, no communication, no contact with humans, really no need to go to the surface at all. And yet here, it's embraced. It's just part of life. And it's okay to look at things from a different place. Now, I understand from a narrative point of view, and we're going to get more into this a little bit later, but Ariel kind of needs to be isolated. She needs to be driven to do what she is going to do. When she goes to Ursula, she needs motivation to do that. And making her father this very rigid and biased, we can say prejudice, because prejudice is, he hasn't really met a human as far as we know. He's never mentioned that he has. He's never had experience with them. This is just his view of humans, knowing nothing about them. His bias is not based on his circumstance. If it was a circumstance, it's not a prejudice anymore. Prejudice exists without any reason, or if you're unreasonable, a reasonable disposition towards something, not based on experience, not based on anything other than just a belief or what you've been told. And that seems to be what he's got. So he's got a prejudice there. And as I said, it needs to be the impetus to drive her away, or drive her to Ursula. So you can kind of understand that, but it does paint a different picture, a less wholesome environment in the Disney version than it is here, where exploring and understanding things of the world above are not prohibited, as you're not so locked down. But here we go. When you have reached your 15th year, said the grandmother, you will have permission to rise up out of the sea, to sit on the rocks in the moonlight while the great ships are sailing by, and then you will see both forests and towns. In the following year, one of the sisters would be 15, but as each was a year younger than the other, the youngest would have to wait 5 years before her turn came to rise up from the bottom of the ocean and see the earth as we do. However, each promised to tell the others what she saw on her first visit and what she thought the most beautiful, for their grandmother could not tell them enough. There were so many things on which they wanted information. None of them longed so much for her turn to come as the youngest, she who had the longest time to wait, and who was so quiet and thoughtful. Many nights she stood by the open window, looking up through the dark blue water and watching the fish as they splashed about with their fins and tails. She could see the moon and stars shining faintly, but through the water they looked larger than they do to our eyes. When something like a black cloud passed between her and them, she knew it was either a whale swimming over her head or a ship full of human beings who never imagined that a pretty little mermaid was standing beneath them, holding out her white hands towards the keel of their ship. As soon as the oldest was 15, she was allowed to rise to the surface of the ocean. When she came back, she had hundreds of things to talk about, but the most beautiful, she said, was to lie in the moonlight on a sandbank in the quiet sea near the coast and to gaze on a large town nearby where the lights were twinkling like hundreds of stars, to listen to the sounds of the music, the noise of carriages, and the voices of human beings, and then to hear the merry bells peal out from the church steeples. And because she could not go near to all those wonderful things, she longed for them more than ever. Oh, did not the youngest sister listen eagerly to these descriptions? And afterwards, when she stood at the open window looking up through the dark blue water, she thought of the great city, with all its bustle and noise, and even fancied she could hear the sound of church bells down in the depths of the sea. So again, she's not the only one fascinated by this. They're all excited about this. It's a very natural thing to think, and it's not even grass is greener. We're not at that point yet. They don't think, I want to go to there, I want to be there. It's just the exposure to a world completely foreign. It's like another planet. And I think we can understand that as people. We can certainly understand being fascinated with something that is utterly foreign to us. And now it says that she longed for it more than they did, but there is still a very wholesome curiosity and fascination with the surface that seems to be shared by all of them. In another year, the second sister received permission to rise to the surface of the water and to swim about where she pleased. She rose just as the sun was setting, and this, she said, was the most beautiful sight of all. The whole sky looked like gold, while violet and rose-colored clouds, which she could not describe, floated over her. And still more rapidly than the clouds flew a large flock of wild swans towards the setting sun, looking like a long white veil across the sea. She also swam towards the sun, but it sank into the waves, and the rosy tints faded from the clouds and from the sea. The third sister's turn followed. She was the boldest of them all, and she swam up a broad river that emptied itself into the sea. On the banks she saw green hills covered with beautiful vines. Places and castles peeped out from amid the proud trees of the forest. She heard the birds singing, and the rays of the sun were so powerful that she was obliged, often to dive down into the water to cool her burning face. Yeah, that's something you don't think of, really. It's like, yeah, if you spend all your life underwater, you come up with they were going to get sunburned, incredibly badly sunburned, having absolutely zero exposure. Crazy. But anyway, burning face. In a narrow creek, she found a whole troop of little human children, quite naked and sporting about in the water. She wanted to play with them, but they fled in great fright. And then a little black animal came into the water. It was a dog, but she did not know that, for she had never before seen one. This animal barked at her so terribly that she became frightened and rushed back to the open sea. But she said she should never forget the beautiful forests, the green hills, and the pretty little children who could swim in the water, although they had no fish's tails. So we have first contact. Again, in the animated version, contact verboten. Can't make contact. She tries, but they freak out and swim away from her. Which I don't understand, because in theory, above the water, she would be just like them. Like they would have to actually dive down to see her tail to notice that she's not like them, at least as far as we know. I did actually, the reason I'm using this and not a website is because the one that I was using originally, as we scrolled down to this part, it had pictures of mermaids and in a state of undress. And I didn't know if I was going to have to get that blurred out or whatever. So I was like, let me just throw it into a document. It's going to be safe there. But again, we have interaction, and we have a mix of good and bad. Like, the dog barking scares her. She doesn't know what it is. It's a strange creature. The children run away from her. So not a great experience, but overall she's thinking about the things that she did, like the beautiful forest, the green hills, and the children in general, even though they didn't necessarily warm to her. But we have first contact, at least amongst these sisters. The fourth sister was more timid. She remained in the midst of the sea, but she said it was quite as beautiful there as near the land. She could see for so many miles around her, and the sky above looked like a bell of glass. She had seen the ships, but at such a great distance that they looked like seagulls. The dolphins sported in the waves, and the great whales spouted water from their nostrils, till it seemed as if 100 fountains were playing in every direction. The fifth sister's birthday occurred in the winter, so when her turn came, she saw what the others had not seen in the first time they went up. The sea looked quite green, and large icebergs were floating about, each like a pearl, she said, but larger and loftier than the churches built by men. They were of the most singular shapes, and glittered like diamonds. She had seated herself upon one of the largest, and let the wind play with her long hair, and she remarked that all the ships sailed by rapidly, and steered as far away as they could from the iceberg, as if they were afraid of it. Towards evening, as the sun went down, dark clouds covered the sky, the thunder rolled and the lightning flashed, and the red light glowed on the icebergs as they rocked and tossed on the heaving sea. On all the ships the sails were reefed with fear and trembling, while she sat calmly on the floating iceberg, watching the blue lightning as it darted its forked flashes into the sea. So, again, just kind of more of the same, different experiences with the land above. No harm, no foul, very descriptive. Again, really taking its time, easing into the meat of the story. And so you can understand, just from a pacing perspective, don't need to do this. If you're trying to tell what is, as I said, a pretty long story, it's understandable. We're gonna cut out a lot of this stuff. And for children viewing it, like we've seen it all. We like, there is no fascination that we have with it. So trying to impart that fascination by watching just the normal things, you'd be like, yeah, okay, why are we seeing this? Especially in the 90s or 1989, when we've got videos and all other kinds of things to show us all the different parts of the world. We didn't have HD at the time, but we did have plenty of ways to experience and explore our world without leaving the comfort of your home. So again, I don't think it's wrong that any of this got axed. I think it's totally understandable, but it's just interesting that the story has so much of this in there. When first the sisters had permission to rise to the surface, they were each delighted with the new and beautiful sights they saw. But now, as grown-up girls, they could go when they pleased, and they'd become indifferent about it. They wished themselves back again in the water, and after a month had passed, they said it was much more beautiful down below and pleasanter to be at home. Yet often in the evening hours, the five sisters would twine their arms around each other and rise to the surface in a row. They had more beautiful voices than any human being could have, and before the approach of a storm, and when they expected a ship would be lost, they swam before the vessel and sang sweetly of the delights to be found in the depths of the sea, and begging the sailors not to fear if they sank to the bottom. But the sailors could not understand the song. They took it for the howling of the storm. And these things were never to be beautiful for them, for if the ship sank, the men were drowned, and their dead bodies alone reached the palace of the Sea King. And that's an interesting thing as well. Like, okay, Grandmother, very wise. Father, I think that might be the last we hear. I don't know that we hear anything of the Sea King other than these references. I don't think he actually has a role like he does in Little Mermaid story. But it's interesting that, they could explore and learn all this stuff, but they don't learn the basics of why humans don't go in the water. Apparently their grandmother, as wise and learned as she was, doesn't tell them they can't breathe. They can't survive down here. And apparently they have no problem breathing on land. Obviously they're not using gills. So in theory, whatever mechanism they use to breathe, whatever magic or what have you that allows them to both breathe the air and the sea under the water, obviously they don't realize, nothing hasn't struck them that the men can't do the same. And it's also weird. It says they had more beautiful voices than any human being could have, but yet it doesn't say that their voices were drowned out by the song, I'm sorry, that the song was drowned out by the waves and the storm. It said they took it for the howling of the storm. They thought the singing was like a howling of a storm. So that's not me pointing out anything in particular, just other than a little bit of a, don't quite understand that. It's supposed to be beautiful, but yet it was mistaken for the howling of a storm, which isn't necessarily beautiful. It's terrifyingly beautiful maybe, but not really something that would be ideal. But just that naivete of just going, encouraging the men, come down. It would be great to have you down here. Having absolutely, and also if they're up there during these storms, isn't it logical that they would witness the ships destroy, like there would be ships that sink and everything and people that drown, and they would realize after a few minutes that, that they're no longer alive, and maybe there's something about that. It's just, it combines this naivete with this very descriptive, very knowing and in-depth look at humans, and yet the very basic fundamentals are completely lost on them. And again, you notice here, when it becomes more commonplace, they do lose their fascination. They do like to dollop a little bit. They'll break the surface, and you hear that they have those interactions, and that they still try to kind of, I would say, play around or entice the men, or having to have that interaction. But it's no longer, they prefer their home. And again, their home is described as welcome and warm and almost like a paradise, essentially. Why would they want to leave? I think, and I'll be honest with you, I've done one or two starting the recordings before, or false recordings before I actually got on this one. So I don't remember if I've talked about this in particular. Forgive me if I have, but as I said, the castle, the description is of almost a paradise. The way Hans Christian Andersen describes Under the Sea, it's not something to escape from. It's not something you'd want to get out of. It's almost heaven on earth. You have interaction with the fishes. They don't just kind of come in and float around. Like, you can actually stroke them and pet them and have this beautiful, amber colors, and it's described as very, very much a paradise. So you can understand why the mermaids aren't necessarily craving for the surface. It was a fascination. It was a fixation for a little while, but once they got to experience it, they got older. They kind of grew out of it, and they're like, yeah, I'm content with where I'm at. When the sisters rose arm in arm through the water in this way, their youngest sister would stand quite alone, looking after them, ready to cry, only that the mermaids have no tears, and therefore they suffer more. Interesting little aside there. There's a lot of these things, and I haven't had a chance to think about each one of them. I will chime in on certain aspects of it, but like this one, I haven't even thought why he went out of his way to say that mermaids have no tears, and therefore they suffer more. Other than to say, with the whole, just as a generalization, crying is good. Like, it's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of frailty inherently. I think people can cry over things that are very trite and everything, and who am I to judge? But I think there is a limit to that. But it just seems like a little nugget of just, you hurt more if you don't cry. If you hold it in, if you're incapable of crying, either in our case, it would be emotionally, it wouldn't be a physical thing, that it causes more pain. Just seemed like a little drop there, just a little something to put in there on the download. Just a sentence that really doesn't need to be said, but is said anyway. Were I but 15 years old, said she, I know that I shall love the world up there and all the people who live in it. At last she reached her 15th year. Well, now you are grown up, said the old dowager, her grandmother. So you must let me adorn you like your other sisters. And she placed a wreath of white lilies in her hair, flowers, if I'm not mistaken, from the land, and every flower leaf was okay, there we go. Sorry, got ahead of myself. Every flower leaf was half a pearl. Then the old lady ordered 8 great oysters to attach themselves to the tail of the princess to show her high rank. But they hurt me so, said the little mermaid. Pride must suffer pain, replied the old lady. Oh, how gladly she would have shaken off all this grandeur and laid aside the heavy wreath. We're going to visit this again in a more poignant way a little bit later on, but we already have this indication. We noticed, remember, it said that she had 12 shells on her body, whereas even the most lofty or, the next best thing in the mer world had 6. But it wasn't necessarily just a good thing. That, again, pride must suffer pain. In order to display my grandeur, in order to show off how respected and lofty I am, there's a pain that comes with that. And we're going to, like I said, revisit that much more prominently in a little bit. So I'm not going to dwell on it right now. But again, going out of his way to talk about this idea that this rank, this splendor, this display is not just there. It's not just, it comes with a cost. It comes with a price. And pride must suffer pain. Not self-esteem, not confidence, pride. But anyway, she's not down with that. The Little Mermaid is like, nah, I'd just as soon not have all this crap and be able to go about without it. But apparently that's not a choice. The red flowers in her garden would have suited her much better, but she could not help herself. So she said, farewell, and rose as lightly as a bubble to the surface of the water. The sun had just set as she raised her head above the waves, but the clouds were tinted with crimson and gold, and through the glimmering twilight beamed the evening star in all its beauty. The sea was calm, and the air mild and fresh. A large ship with 3 masts lay becalmed on the water, with only one sail set, for not a breeze stiffed, and the sailors sat idle on deck or amongst the rigging. There was music and song on board, and as darkness came on, 100 colored lanterns were lighted, as if the flags of all nations waved in the air. The little mermaid swam close to the cabin windows, and now and then, as the waves lifted her up, she could look in through the clear glass window panes and see a number of well-dressed people within. Among them was a young prince, the most beautiful of all, with large black eyes. He was 16 years of age, and his birthday was being kept with much rejoicing. So we have here, why not have the visuals? We do have that very same scenario here. We have there it is. Now it's not the glass, through the glass windows, but we have the same deal. Her swimming up to look and behold. No, notice she's not doing it as, there's her grotto. She's not doing it, you've come of age, you're now allowed to do this. She's now just doing this actually in rebellion. I mean, her father gets on her and says, hey, no contact with the surface. Now, whether he's right or wrong, that's one thing, but that is still the rule. And arguably it's there for a good reason. Doesn't mean that he's right wholly, but it is knowingly I'm going to do something that is not, as far as I know, she's been alive a lot less time than her dad. As far as I know, there's a good reason why I'm not supposed to be up here. But anyway, the same thing, and it's a birthday. Now, Eric, I would argue, and this is probably a little bit older than 16. He definitely seems like he's maybe in his mid to late 20s. But again, it's all well and good, no difference there. But very much the same deal as we have in the story. So scene by scene, almost at this point. So yeah, including the birthday, but that does indicate that the statue down there, the one that she actually has, is not of Eric, is not of the prince. It's just of the visage of a human boy. The sailors were dancing on deck, but when the prince came out of the cabin, more than 100 rockets rose in the air, making it as bright as day. The little mermaid was so startled that she dived under the water, and when she again stretched out her head, it appeared as if all the stars of heaven were falling around her. She had never seen such fireworks before. Great suns spurted fire about. Splendid fireflies flew into the blue air, and everything was reflected in the clear, calm sea beneath. The ship itself was so brightly illuminated that all the people, and even the smallest rope, could be distinctly and plainly seen. And how handsome the young prince looked as he pressed the hands of all present and smiled at them. I guess that's their version of a high five, is pressing the hands. Hey, no fist bumps here, folks. We're pressing hands. I don't think it was like it's probably like a high five. And we got it right here, folks. 1836, people were high fiving. As you press the hands of all small as my president, and smiled at them while the music resounded through the clear night. So she's getting like so much better of an experience than her sisters did. She's getting the full deal. She's getting fireworks. She's getting the hotness. This amazing looking prince. She's getting all the things. A very close look at it all as well, without really having to be at any risk. She's seeing everything and being able to experience and witness all the cool stuff that humans do, like pressing their hands together. It was very late, yet the little mermaid could not take her eyes from the ship or from the beautiful prince. The colored lanterns had been extinguished. No more rockets rose in the air, and the cannon had ceased firing, but the sea became restless. I wonder, the cannon's firing. I wonder if anybody's hit by these cannonballs. And it's probably another reason not to go to the surface, but it just didn't even think about that. It's like, oh, look, ships. Oh my gosh, big lead balls coming down very, very quickly. Could definitely give you a good welch on the head. I mean, the water would slow it down, but it still hits you pretty hard if you weren't paying attention. But the scene became restless, and moaning, grumbling could be heard beneath the waves. Still, the little mermaid remained by the cabin window, rocking up and down on the water, which enabled her to look in. After a while, the sails were quickly unfurled, and the noble ship continued her passage. But soon the waves rose higher. Heavy clouds darkened the sky, and lightning appeared in the distance. A dreadful storm was approaching. Once more the sails were reefed, and the great ship pursued her flying course over the raging sea. The waves rose mountains high, as if they would have overtopped the mast, but the ship dived like a swan between them, and then rose again on their lofty foaming crests. To the little mermaid this appeared pleasant sport. Not so to the sailors. At length the ship groaned and creaked. The thick planks gave way under the lashing of the sea as it broke over the deck. The mainmast snapped asunder like a reed. The ship lay over on her side, and the water rushed in. The little mermaid now perceived that the crew were in danger. Even she herself was obliged to be careful to avoid the beams and planks of the wreck, which lay scattered on the water. At one moment it was so pitch dark that she could not see a single object, but a flash of lightning revealed the whole scene. She could see every one who had bound on board, excepting the prince. When the ship parted, she had seen him sink into the deep waves, and she was glad, for she thought he would now be with her. And then she remembered that human beings could not live in the water. So here we go. So at some point, apparently the story has adapted to my critique, and at some point in there, we now have the daughters. Maybe she understood this by the panic. Maybe she saw some of the dead bodies in the water. I don't know. But apparently, while her sisters would be like, hey, come swim in the water with us, like, it'd be cool, she knows, so she has the initial thought. And again, some parts of the fairy tales are just kind of strange. And she was glad, so she experiences gladness, for she thought he would now be with her. And then she remembered. So it's kind of weird. Like, I guess maybe that was just something that was told to them very, very early on, and they forgot about it in general, which is why they're like, hey, come swim with us. It'd be awesome. And why she initially goes, yay, my prince is going to be down here with me. But then she remembers they can't live in the water, so that when he got down to her father's palace, he would be quite dead. But he must not die. So she swam about among the beams and planks which strewed the surface of the sea, forgetting that they could crush her to pieces. Then she dived deeply under the dark waters, rising and falling with the waves, till at length she managed to reach the young prince, who was fast losing the power of swimming in that stormy sea. His limbs were failing him, his beautiful eyes were closed, and he would have died had not the little mermaid come to his assistance. She held his head above water and let the waves drift them where they would. So we have, again, very much exactly as it's laid out. We got the storm here raging, and there is the rescue. And there he is, so very, very much a faithful retelling. She risks, it wasn't, oh, I'm underwater, so I'm okay. There was no risk. She took a risk. You had the waves being battered on the surface, as well as the planks and the wood, the debris all over the place. And that she risked all that to save him. It's a great thing. Now, it is interesting. I do want to point out that, whereas with Snow White, we had a very brief, very compact courting process. But at the end of it, when Snow White pulls that curtain, we know he's into her and she's into him. Like, there's no question about that. You have the love at first sight thing, but it's proven out, even though it's very, very like stated outright. Like there's none of the to and fro and the kind of the playfulness or the coyness that we experience in real relationships. It's very much her going, I want the prince, or I want the guy. And he's like, I'm right here. And she's like, okay. That's pretty much it. So there's no question when we see him wake her up with a kiss. First of all, that the kiss, it's not just some stranger, that it came from somebody who she had already kind of given some affection towards and indicated, yeah, I'm interested. But that when she wakes up, it's natural. She throws her arms out and is like, hold me because, or take me, because we knew that they had that initial relationship. What we have here is her witnessing. And in this one, we don't even have Max. That was another thing. Classic Disney does this, and I think it's to good effect. I think it's a good thing they do this. But, they introduce, we have Flounder, we have Sebastian, we have, I can't remember the seagull's name. His name isn't Snarfblatt, but that's what I want to call him because that's the big word I remember him saying. Gil, maybe? I don't know. That wouldn't make any sense. Anyway, you got that. And then you have Max, Max the dog. Max doesn't do a whole lot for the story, but, it's still another thing. And so in that's really the only interaction we see that he has. I mean, Eric talks to some other people. He talks to, what's his face? The dude who gives him the statue, this guy here, Bigsby or Rigsby or something. That guy. He has a conversation with him, but other than that, he's just playing with Max. So this is all based on like her and look, hey, say she's going to save the guy's life. We don't need there to be, some more profound things. She cares about him enough. She's drawn to him enough. I mean, to heck with the rest of the sailors. They're ugly. They don't have big black eyes. They're not princes. Let's go for the prince. That's a not nice way to look at the story. It's not a negative thing. She didn't say, screw the other guys, I'm going to save him. She just said, I want to save this guy. And he did need saving. So yeah, we don't need to be jerks about it. But she saves him, but the nature of love at first sight can be a thing, or the being drawn to somebody, being attracted to somebody at first sight can be a thing. That doesn't mean that it is going to last. You can meet somebody and be like, whoa, this is amazing. She's enchanting. And she's like, whoa. And then you talk for like 5 minutes, like, nope, this is not going to work. Deal breaker. Okay, we're done. Or, over a short amount of time, you discover this person isn't really who I thought they were. That is just the impetus. That is just the instigating factor that brings people together. So just something to note that in this story, both in the Disney version and this one, there is not their eyes met and there was a spark of interest. It was, he's a beautiful man, beautiful eyes, so beautiful man. The fact that he's a prince doesn't sound like it's a big factor in there, but it is worth mentioning that he was, well off. But it's this allure that she has for him. She's doing all these things, but it is not under the pretense or the belief that there is actually a relationship here. She has these feelings for him, which spur her to do a very heroic thing, but we're not to believe that this relationship has any legs. I mean, literally in her case, but that hasn't been confirmed. There was no, even in the Disney version, which is very much more into the love aspect of it. Even in the Disney version, there is nothing done, and reasonably you couldn't, to make a connection between these two before she decides, oh my gosh, I love this guy. She's already decided. She's seen his statue is, well, no, wait, that comes after this. She falls in love pretty much at first sight. That's my point. But there's nothing to guarantee that he would love her back or that he is actually even a good guy. Just because he plays with his dog doesn't mean he's not a psychopath, So just something to keep in mind. The morning the storm had ceased. In the morning, the storm had ceased, but of the ship, not a single fragment could be seen. The sun rose up red and glowing from the water, and its beams brought back the hue of health to the prince's cheeks, but his eyes remained closed. The mermaid kissed his high, smooth forehead and stroked back his wet hair. He seemed to her like the marble statue in her little garden, and she kissed him again and wished that he might live. Presently they came in sight of land. She saw lofty blue mountains on which white snow rested as if a flock of swans were lying upon them. These flock of swans, they're veils, they're snow. If you're a white bird, boy, you can just be anything in these stories. Near the coast were beautiful green forests, and close by stood a large building, whether a church or a convent she could not tell. Why would she know what either of those are? It's a building. Orange and citron trees grew in the garden, and before the door stood lofty palms. Interesting. When palms, I think of palm trees, which makes me think of, let me minimize this again. It makes me think of like Florida or something. And so maybe this is like a Caribbean feel, but it's Europe. I don't know. Anyway, the sea here formed into a little bay in which the water was quite still, but still very deep. So she swam with the handsome prince to the beach, which was covered with fine white sand. And there she laid him in the warm sunshine, taking care to raise his head higher than his body. A little bit of medical stuff there. I love that we just have this little addition. It's like being very careful to give 3 compressions for every rescue breath. Like it's like the old fashioned version of CPR. Just FYI, if you rescue a drowning victim, keep the head above the water and make sure the head is above the body so that it's not draining through his nose and whatever. Anyway. The bells sounded in the large white building, and a number of young girls came into the garden. The little mermaid swam out further from the shore and placed herself between some high rocks that rose out of the water. Then she covered her head and neck with the foam of the sea so that her little face might not be seen, and watched to see what would become of the poor prince. She did not wait long before she saw a young girl approach the spot where he lay. Now, remember, we have this scene, but I think this is a good call by Disney, where she sings. She does kiss him, I believe. Does she? I don't want to. I'm just concerned about copyright stuff. I don't want to go too far into that. But she sings, so he hears her voice, and again, I think it's a good thing. It gives him a little bit more to go on. It's not just I can't find the exact frame here where we see his point of view. Or maybe it's here. Nope. Come on. I don't know. Anyway, he's smitten by her, right? So we do get a little bit of that at this point. Now we have a little bit of him going, she seems like a great gal. She rescued me. Enchanting voice. And again, that's planting the seed for what's going to happen, or the idea that the one thing, he kind of has a vague idea of what she looks like, but it's that voice that is what captures his heart, that really has him kind of going, ooh, she's just absolutely beautiful. She's sang beautifully. And so that's going to come into play. Whereas in this one, she doesn't sing. She has, in theory, like her sister, she has a good voice, but he doesn't hear it as of yet. Anywho, there we go. She did not wait long before she saw a young girl approach the spot where he lay. She seemed frightened at first, but only for a moment. Then she fetched a number of people, and the mermaid saw that the prince came to life again and smiled upon those who stood around him. But to her he sent no smile. He knew not that she had saved him. This made her very unhappy, and when he was led away into the great building, she dived down sorrowfully into the water and returned to her father's castle. She had always been silent and thoughtful, and now she was more so than ever. Her sisters asked her what she had seen during her first visit to the surface of the water, but she would tell them nothing. Many an evening and morning did she rise to the place where she had left the prince. She saw the fruits in the garden ripen until they were gathered, the snow on the tops of the mountains melt away, but she never saw the prince, and therefore she returned home always more sorrowful than before. So experiencing a longing, a yearning for him, something that, Ariel gets some satisfaction with. So there we go. Her singing, this is awesome. And now she's Twitter painted, as they would say from Bambi. Now she is in this very, this very wonderful space. But notice here whether it's her being, again, that Twitter painted, I'm, just in love, just dreamy, or her being sorrowful because, and I don't think in this story it's supposed to be she's being a jerk, like, well, I saved his life and he didn't even know or care. It's truly a sorrowful thing. Like, you know, like, especially for as much as she was yearning, like it would be nice to get a smile from him. It would be nice to get an acknowledgement from him. Not necessarily, oh, I owe you, you saved my life, but just a connection there. But in both cases, in here she's sorrowful. In this one, she's jubilant. In The Little Mermaid, the Disney version. But in both cases, it's a life that she cannot lead. This is a fantasy. This is not reality. This is not a chasm that can be breached in either story. So she's sad because of something she can't have, a connection she can't have. And in this other one, she's happy and even more so immersed in this other world because of what has happened. But there's still a barrier of entry. The reality is still, you're a mermaid, you are under the water. He cannot join you under the water, nor can you join him. And so it's really still that it's something that I think is missed or not really considered in the original or in the movie, is that this is a fantasy world. You have this not ode, but this what do you call that? You erected it's like it's like to a god, like a thing of worship, I can't remember what it's called now. Shrine. Ariel has erected a shrine to this other life, to this other world. And now when she gets the statue, now she has very much an idol, a thing to fixate on. So do we have? Yep, this is all. Yep, there we go. There we go. Her adoration and her holding on to this fantasy that we know where the story goes. At least we know where the Disney version goes. You may be surprised what ends up happening in the actual story, but this is not her wanting to be with a commoner. This is not her, wanting to be in the Bahamas part of the ocean, even though her father's palace is in the deepest part of the water. This is a life you simply cannot have. There is no way to cohabitate with this fantasy that you have decided to engage with, that you spend a lot of your time doting on. And we see also in the original, or no, I'm sorry, not in the original, in the Disney version, you've got all this, like this whole party, this whole celebration, everybody's watching, the animals, and you know what happens in this. I won't be able to show it necessarily, but it opens up and Ariel's not there. So you've got this life with her family, with her sisters, with her father, with the other people of the ocean. You have this opportunity to engage with this. And where is she? She's treasure hunting for stuff that is in a fantasy world. It's, they talk, nowadays you talk about the guys living in their mother's basement, and they're playing video games and they're, obsessed. They don't come out. They don't talk to people. They just have their own little, that's pretty much what this is. This is a girl forsaking, not just that there's nothing going on under the sea. There's plenty going on. There's a party. And even here later on, we have where Sebastian's trying to talk to her. He's trying to, under the sea. There's a lot of great things under the sea. There are amazing things under the sea. And then she bails once again, because she's distracted. She's taken away by a fantasy. And I think that is a point that deserves to be emphasized. This is not about bettering your life. This is about coveting, craving, yearning, obsessing over something that you just can't have, to the detriment of your actual relationships and your actual life. And in this story, it's saying, we're this whole under the sea dwelling is described as a wonderful, amazing place. And they do that in these songs and the presentation in the Disney one. And it's like, no, not interested in that. I want more. I want this other life. The grass is always greener. In this case, it literally is grass, but I want this. And there should be a disconnect there a little bit. We should be going, this is not healthy. We're not championing Ariel right now. We're not championing. Now here, again, she's sad because she is yearning. It's still yearning for a life she really can't have, but it's not, and it says she does become more quiet and reserved. So in many ways, it is thematically the same. Your life is being impacted by a fantasy, and it's having an adverse effect on your actual life. So in both of them, I think it may be understandable. We may be able to relate in some way or be like, yeah, I've been there. But at the same time, we understand that it's not healthy. And this is not something we're going, yeah, I want you to spend more time being happy or being sad because of a fantasy. I want you to spend more time being disconnected from your reality in your life and spend more time fantasizing about being somewhere else and being someone else. Anyway, let's just jump back in here. It was her only comfort to sit in her own little garden and fling her arm around the beautiful... We just saw it! We just saw it there! Fling her arm around the beautiful statue, marble statue, which was like the prince. So again, I think it was just a generic statue maybe, but she, it seemed to represent him. So we do have a lot of parallels here in the story, in the two different stories. At this point, where they're more or less, I would say, running parallel to each other. There's some embellishment on the Disney side. There's some things that are left out, but I think overall it is a serviceable way of getting us to this point in the story with music and everything else that Disney has come to incorporate in its stories. I think it's fine there. We have a slight variation on where Ariel is at emotionally, or the mermaid is at emotionally at this point. In one, she's mournful, and the other one, she's all like, oh yeah. But it's still, again, wrapped up in a fantasy world. And yeah, even throwing her arms around the beautiful marble statue. So you can see, it's fascinating when you look at this, you can see where the artists and the animators and the people writing the script took, like, oh, that's a great shot. I like the idea of her putting her arm around this statue, of having that kind of longing manifested in this visage, this sculpture of a person, of a human. And again, making it actually Eric, although it is a little crazy. Okay, we're going to lug this giant heavy stone statue onto a freaking boat, onto a ship. Maybe if you lived on the boat, that's one thing, but like to tote it onto the boat and to unveil it there, it's like, okay, but whatever. It does create a stronger connection that the mermaid has with the statue than if it was just a generic one. So again, I'm on board. No pun intended. But she gave up tending her flowers. Here we go. But she gave up tending her flowers, and they grew in wild confusion over the paths, twining their long leaves and stems around the branches of the trees, so that the whole place became dark and gloomy. At length she could bear it no longer, and told one of her sisters all about it. Then the others heard the secret, and soon it became known to two mermaids whose intimate friend happened to know who the prince was. She had also seen the festival on board ship and told them where the prince had come from and where his palace stood. So somehow there were mermaids who had already kind of been pining for this guy, or had seen him, or were familiar with him, and is being drawn in. But here's the important thing. She gave up tending her flowers. They grew in wild confusion. The whole place became dark and gloomy. Again, forsaking what you have, the reality that you're living in, what you had put a lot of your attention and focus on. And now, because of a yearning and a longing for something you can't have, something that is out of your reach, those are abandoned. And not only just like they grew wild, but to their detriment, dark and gloomy. That is a reflection possibly like of her mood, but also of the state of affairs. Something that she had been very had tended with great diligence, now was forsaken. Come, little sister, said the other princesses. Then they entwined their arms and rose up in a long row to the surface of the water, close by the spot where they knew the prince's palace stood. It was built of bright yellow shining stone with long flights of marble steps, one of which reached quite down to the sea. Splendid gilded cupolas rose over the roof, or cupolas. I should have done a little more vocabularying before I started doing this, but what are you going to do? I didn't realize there would be this many big words in a children's fairy tale. And between the pillars that surrounded the whole building stood lifelike statues of marble. Through the clear crystal of the lofty windows could be seen noble rooms with costly silk curtains and hangings of tapestry, while the walls were covered with beautiful paintings which were a pleasure to look at. In the center of the largest saloon, a fountain threw its sparkling jets high up into the glass cupola of the ceiling, through which the sun shone down upon the water and upon the beautiful plants growing around the basin of the fountain. Hans Christian Andersen, again, man, he's kind of like Tolkien. He's like Tolkien, Charles Dickens. We are just going to paint you the picture of the world, of the atmosphere in every single scene. The runtime on this particular fairy tale is crazy with just how much details and descriptions. To his credit, I mean, it does paint a fantastic picture, but my gosh, we might start skipping a little bit of this because this is going to go on for a long time just describing this stuff. And this is not really necessarily what we're focusing on in the story. Darkwing Jets. Now that she knew where he lived, she spent many an evening and many a night on the water near the palace. She would swim much nearer the shore than any of the others ventured to do. Indeed, once she went quite up the narrow channel under the marble balcony, which threw a broad shadow on the water. Here she would sit. So this is interesting. I don't think we have this in the Disney version, which is because I think, I mean, it would be gorgeous if it was the case. Yeah, I mean, she doesn't see the palace until he finds her and then he takes her inside. Now, again, they do a great job making the palace look great, but I don't think, we may be missing it somewhere in there, but I don't think there is an image of this. But the idea that the balcony is over the water, that's pretty cool. Like, that's a nifty castle, I got to say. I don't know that we've seen many like that, but the idea that you have this awesome, balcony overlooking the ocean, pretty cool. Now, if it had a pool built into it, that'd be very Hollywood, I think. But we don't have that particular aspect. But very cool and very convenient, as it does allow her to get very, very close. Here she would sit and watch the young prince, who thought himself quite alone in the bright moonlight. All right, so we got a little bit of the stalking thing. Weird, This we definitely have that. Completely unaware. What do they call it? Voyeurism, I think it is. I can't remember, but yeah. And again, there's nothing. I personally don't think there's. Well, I don't know. You could consider that creepy. But I mean, it's supposed to be her pining for him. But again, I'm observing you. You don't know that I'm there. Little unsettling. Happily, doesn't happen in the Disney version. She stays under the water. She keeps it clean. She just keeps her doting on that little statue down there. Doesn't do any of the shenanigans. Many times in evening, sailing in a pleasant boat with music playing and flags waving, she peeped out from among the green rushes, and if the wind caught her long, silvery white veil, those who saw it believed it to be a swan spreading out its wings. Again, the swan, all over the place. Just swans everywhere. On many a night, too, when the fishermen, with their torches, were out at sea, she heard them relate so many good things about the doings of the young prince that she was glad she had saved his life. Now, here we go. So there's a little bit of strike here. In the Little Mermaid movie, we don't have anything vouching for his character before she decides to take the plunge. When we're going to get to that part, hopefully very soon here, when she makes that agreement and becomes, gets her legs, she still has no idea. Aside from the fact she does now, I will give the movie credit for this. They do have this very not terribly awkward exposition where they talk about him being single and him not being ready to marry because he hasn't found the right one yet. So that is good, because otherwise you're going, you don't know if the guy's single, married, engaged. Like, you're pining after a guy, he could be married. You never know. But at least in the Disney version, that is made clear. And I think this one is kind of alluding to that fact as well. So we at least know that he's not taken, which is a good thing. But here she's getting some vouching for his character before she decides to take the plunge. Whereas in the Disney version, it's, I love him, he's said some stuff, and he seems to have been kind of enamored of me. And again, I'm not, don't want to do a double standard thing with Snow White. It was a very distinct, I see you, and we're falling in love kind of thing with the beginnings of it. Whereas here, it's still kind of the idea of you. You seem like a really swell guy. You're incredibly handsome, saved your life. And we share this kind of tender, somewhat intimate moment, and him going, well, there's this, I've got a vague image of this woman in my mind. Obviously, again, what he actually sees isn't her, or he doesn't see her well enough because he doesn't recognize her when he sees her. It's her voice that is the key, which plays into the fact that she loses her voice in order to pursue a relationship with him. But I don't want to bemoan that too much. But again, it's not, there's still a lot of uncertainty here. This is not, we made a connection and we're moving forward together. it's still very much both of them going, I've got a general idea that this person exists. But to their character and to whether there's actually love there or not, still kind of in question. But again, we understand we're taking for granted, and I think we have to and we should, because it's a love story, that what she feels for him is genuine love, and what he feels for her, or at least how he imagines her, is also some kind of love. Not just some kind of infatuation or what have you. She was glad she had saved his life when he'd been tossed about half dead on the waves, and she remembered that his head had rested on her bosom, and how heartily she had kissed him. But he knew nothing of all this, and could not even dream of her. She grew more and more fond of human beings, and wished more and more to be able to wander about with those whose world seemed to be so much larger than her own. Again, seemed larger than her own. Somebody needs to tell Little Mermaid, 70% of the world is water. Granted, it's rivers and lakes as well. Definitely more in your world than in his, but undeniably there are plenty of things that we have that they don't. Now, Disney confuses a little bit because it makes it sound, aside from them singing the mermaid's song, it sounds like noises, birds chirping, and even music are the province of the land. Whereas in the Disney version, we've got Sebastian is a freaking, conductor, and is the music guy, crab. And so the distinction between the two is a little bit diminished. It's not so much that they play these wonderful instruments and they do these amazing things on the land. There's an entire song about how they do that down under the sea as well. So a little bit different there, but nothing gravely missed. We have to have music in a musical at Disney. It's obligatory, and so you got to have music under the sea as well. But again, this is very one-sided right now. In the fairy tale, it's 100% one-sided. He knows nothing of her at all. She doesn't know that he's watching him. He doesn't know that she's watching him. He doesn't know that she kissed him. He doesn't know any of that. Little Mermaid, at least in the Disney version, there is a little building towards that. He at least knows there is a girl out there who probably saved his life. She has this beautiful voice and kind of a face of something that isn't unattractive, we'll say. So there's a little more substance there, but not much. They could fly over the sea in ships and mount the high hills which were far above the clouds and the lands they possessed. Their woods and their fields stretched far away beyond the reach of her sight. There was so much that she wished to know, and her sisters were unable to answer all her questions. Then she applied to her old grandmother, who knew all about the upper world, which she very rightly called the lands above the sea. "If human beings are not drowned," asked the little mermaid, "can they live forever? Do they never die as we do here in the sea?" "Yes," replied the old lady, "they must also die, and their term of life is even shorter than ours. We sometimes live to 300 years, but when we cease to exist, here we only become the foam on the surface of the water, and we have not even a grave down here of those we love. We have no immortal souls, which we shall never live again. But like the green seaweed, when once it has been cut off, we can never flourish more. Human beings, on the contrary, have a soul which lives forever, lives after the body has been turned to dust. It rises through the clear, pure air beyond the glittering stars. As we rise out of the water and behold all the land of the earth, so do they rise to unknown and glorious regions which we shall never see." "Why have not we an immortal soul?" asked the little mermaid mournfully. "I would give gladly all the hundreds of years that I have to live, to be a human being only for one day, and to have the hope of knowing the happiness of that glorious world above the stars." "You must not think of that," said the old woman. "We feel ourselves to be much happier and much better off than human beings." "So I shall die," said the little mermaid, "and as the foam of the sea I shall be driven about, never again to hear the music of the waves, or to see the pretty flowers, nor the red sun. Is there anything I can do to win an immortal soul?" "No," said the old woman, "unless a man were to love you so much that you were more to him than his father or mother, and if all his thoughts and all his love were fixed upon you, and the priest placed his right hand on yours, and he promised to be true to you here and hereafter, then his soul would glide into your body, and you would obtain a share in the future happiness of mankind. He would give a soul to you and retain his own as well, but this can never happen. Your fish's tail, which amongst us is considered so beautiful, is thought on earth to be quite ugly. They do not know any better, and they think it necessary to have 2 stout props, which they call legs, in order to be handsome." Then the little mermaid sighed and looked sorrowfully at her fish's tail. "Let us be happy," said the old lady, "and dart and spring about during the 300 years that we have to live, which is really quite long enough. After that we can rest ourselves all the better. This evening we are going to have a court ball." This is a big deal. Now, you probably know this exists nowhere in the Little Mermaid story, the Disney version. It is gutted out completely. This really struck me when I read this. I was like, holy cow. Like, now, there's a lot to unpack here. There is good reason for taking this out of the story, but it has some pretty bad consequences. First, you have the idea that, well, for many of us, you either believe there is, whatever religion or whatever belief system you have, you either believe that there is something more to our lives than what we experience here, and that there is something immortal, in a sense, to our beings that will transcend, that once we are freed from this body, it will transcend the physical realm, and it will now exist in another way, another form of existence. Or you believe that life is fully contained within the body, and that there is nothing more to it, that the idea of a spirit or soul is separate from the physical body, doesn't exist. And so when the body function shuts down, the brain shuts down, existence ceases. Now, regardless of what your belief is or not, the idea of something ethereal, the idea of something beyond our existence is appealing, even if someone would say, well, that's a crutch. But from a fantastical standpoint, from a fantasy, from a whimsical perspective, it's a very encouraging and very, I would say, welcome concept. The idea that there's more to us than this flesh, and that when it gets old and goes away and the body breaks down and dies, that there is life beyond that. There's existence beyond that. And so the idea that we can't relate to that, or that it would be something very foreign to, especially to a child, is a kind of a peculiar thing. But I think that's why Disney cut it out, because it is a little bit of a hard concept to grasp. It goes a little bit deeper than your typical fairy tale would. They replace that with the love, or they supplant that. Well, I'll explain it. Here, they're intertwined. The mermaid's desire to be with the prince is also intertwined with her desire to have a soul. Those two, very coincidentally, having one gives you the other. Well, yeah, but not the other way around. So if she can be with the prince, which is what she wants, and everything that's described there is pretty much marriage. It's, man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. And, the marriage ceremony that would have existed at this time and everything. It's pretty much saying you get, you two fall in love. He commits to you to spend the rest of his life with you till death do us part. It gets you're officially married. This isn't just some fling or eloping. You go through the proper channels, you get married, bam. A part of his soul goes into you. He retains his soul, but now you have part of it, and now you both can enjoy life after together and ascend into the heavens. But you've got a tail. And now I don't know if this has always existed and we just now know about it because the internet is very revealing. But regardless, one way or the other, I would say that in today's day and age, there are plenty of guys who would have no beef with a fish's tail. I've seen many comments to that effect. We don't need to explore that any further, but let's just say that grandma doesn't know the extent of human interests, we'll say. But it gives a lot more depth to the story, that this isn't just about love. And notice the focus shifts from wanting to be with him. Well, no, I mean, the focus is actually about the afterlife. It's about the soul and its existence. She's not asking all this specifically because of the prince. It's not purely just a love for him. It's her desire to have a soul and her yearning for that. Now, one thing to note, a big deal here, there's been a plethora of movies. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there are plenty of movies where you have life or society as it's being presented and everybody's going along and think everything is great. And then our protagonist finds out somehow, because a secret is revealed or they stumble onto something, that it's not what we think, folks. We think everything is going great, but really there's corruption under the surface. Or we think that this is leading us to paradise, but in reality, we're being led to our deaths, or we're being led around and we'll never find it. Like, in other words, that things are not as they seem. They're actually far worse. And the protagonist then helps usher in a new era of understanding and truth, where the people can live according to what the reality is and not what they have been taught or how they've been deceived. This makes it very clear that the grandmother, in theory, the Sea King, and all the sisters, they know they've only got 300 years at most to live, and they're okay with that. There's nothing wrong with that. They in fact, they see that as a benefit. Like, we get to spend our time, then we're done, we rest, it's all gone. There's no problem there. It's like we just cease to be. They don't see a problem, and there's no deeper reality to explore. We have an entire ecosystem, an entire civilization that is okay with we have years allotted to us, and then after that we're done. And they're not concerned about that. They're not fearful of it. They don't they're not overwhelmed with the concept of death and the idea that they're not going to live beyond. Everything is fine. There's nothing more to reveal here. But we see that doesn't necessarily fly with the Little Mermaid. She's sad at the idea that she won't ever hear the waves again, that there is an abrupt ending to her life. And I think that we can relate to that. Now, I don't know how much back in the 1800s they would have, but we at least can understand, if you look at history, there's not a 300-year stretch of history that is free of some kind of intense suffering. In fact, there's a lot of suffering, a lot of violence, a lot of mayhem and mishaps and accidents and man-made things. There's not a good stretch of 300. So the idea that you would live to see the end of the full 300 days, pretty slim. But even then, it's not like you're living in bliss for those 300 years. It's a hard knock life. No matter which way you slice it, whenever you grew up in the world, in human history anyway, there's never a really good slice where you go, yeah, I'll take that 300 years. There's a give and take throughout history. So we can say, yeah, that's kind of a raw deal from our perspective. But I think whatever we feel about it, we are supposed to understand that they're okay with this reality, and that her not being okay with it is a little abnormal. Now, we know, it's been said many times, she was peculiar, she was quiet and thoughtful. So we know she's different. She's cut from different cloth. She's a little more interested in the humans and in their land and everything and their life. She's developed affection, very strong affection. We could even say love, perhaps a degree of obsession with a human. And so it also stands to reason that she would also be wanting to have that life and wanting to have that soul. In other words, I am a mermaid. I want to be a human. That's kind of where we're at. I am one thing. I want to be something else. And I'm somewhat discontented with my life as the thing that I am, which is understandable, especially for those of us who do think that there is a life beyond death. You're going, yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, I would be wanting to see how I could make that deal as well. I would want to figure out how I could get a soul as well. If there's a way, I want to go for it. Now, in theory, I would be out of luck because it seems to be the girl finding the guy or the guy marrying the gal, not the other way around. So it's not, it's like trying to get your citizenship in real life. It can go both ways, but here, if you want citizenship into the afterlife, it's got to be a gal meeting up with a guy. But I think there's a very profound desire. Like I understand the mermaid's desires more because I think that's a more. So forget what I said earlier. I feel like we've gained and we've lost. We've made it more simple. Disney has gone, okay, we're gonna carve out this whole idea of immortality, of a soul, because it kind of muddies the water. It makes things more complicated. Maybe it doesn't resonate with everybody as much. Would kids really understand that? We're gonna make it about love. It's much easier to understand, much easier story to tell, and it's much more universal because most everybody believes in love to some degree or another. But you also lose something, I think, that resonates more with more people, which is a desire to have some kind of eternal life, not live here on the earth, not the maniacal, I'm going to live forever and take over the world, but just that we are more than what we seem to be, that we have a life and existence beyond this and a great adventure that awaits us. We don't know exactly what it's going to entail, but it's more than what we get here. You get a nice taste. 100 years or so on this earth is, I would say, long enough to experience what life has to offer. And then you get to move on to something else. Whereas with them, it's, you get to live, you get to experience more of the life that you have, but then it doesn't go any further. But for me, it's a much more profound thing. And I personally see a justification for the mermaid going, I'm willing to take greater risks to obtain immortality, this type of immortality, versus I'm willing to take risks to possibly be able to pursue a relationship with a guy who I don't really know from a hole in the wall. You see, so it's, you gain and lose things, but ultimately, regardless of whether you think that's a good motivating factor or that it's actually better to have it in the Disney version, the fact of the matter is when you carve that part out of the story, you no longer have the ending of the original. You cannot get to the ending. We're going to see where it is. We're almost halfway there. You're not going to be able to get to the ending of the original because it's very much focused on this element. So you've metaphorically and literally carved out the soul of this story, of this version of The Little Mermaid, this original story. In forsaking this element, Disney has carved the soul out of The Little Mermaid, and now they have to fill it with something else. Doesn't mean it can't be good. Doesn't mean it's not as good inherently, but it does mean that you have fundamentally changed where the story goes and how it can be told. So let's go ahead and carry on here. Right. Mortal soul. Okay. And this is going to be describing, this is the grandmothers saying, we're having a great party down here. So, don't worry too much about not having a soul. Let's party on to the break of dawn. It is one of those splendid sights which we can never see on Earth. The walls and the ceilings of the large ballroom were of thick but transparent crystal, like swans, right? I'm guessing. Many hundreds of colossal shells, some of deep red. Now we do see this. This is essentially what we see in, like, we get a glimpse. Again, you can kind of see the inspiration for some of this stuff right here. Don't we have the... Well, okay, yeah, see, they're coming out of the seashells and everything. So we're seeing the inspiration for that here. Blah, 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 blah. Innumerable fishes, great and small, swam past the crystal walls. On some of them, the scales glowed with a purple brilliancy. On others, they shone like silver and gold. I am going to skip ahead a little bit here because, well, not so much. No one on earth had... Oh, here we go. Through the halls flowed a broad stream, and in it danced the mermen and the mermaids to the music of their own sweet singing. So we do have mermen. Now, they do have that in the Disney version as well. But when we talk about forsaking what you have and your reality for a fantasy, understanding it's not that she was also longing for love that she could not have because there were no dudes. We have the Sea King and we have mermen. So while fantasizing and longing for a human, she is also forsaking by default a relationship with somebody of her own kind in this reality that she has. Now, it doesn't sound like, in neither story is she being approached by a merman who's like, hey, I kind of like you. And she's like, no, I want my prince. So we don't have an overt rejection of the relationship down there. But when your eyes are looking over here, they're not looking, like, if your focus and your vision is here, looking up at this fantasy world, you're not looking down or over at anybody else. So I think that's, again, something else to mention. No one on earth has such a lovely voice as theirs. The Little Mermaid sang more sweetly than them all. The whole court applauded her with hands and tails, and for a moment her heart felt quite gay, for she knew that she had the loveliest voice of any on earth or in the sea. So, hey, we have a spike. She's been depressed for the longest time, but now she's happy because she's got the best voice of any on earth or in the sea. So it does make the point, regardless of how the voices were described earlier, her voice is the prettiest ever in Land or sea, she's got the bestest voice. But she soon thought again of the world above her, for she could not forget the charming prince, nor her sorrow that she had not an immortal soul like his. So really, this is from this point on, we are intertwining her love and affection and longing for him with this idea of immortal soul. It's not just her love and her, again, obsession, fixation, however you want to think of it, on the prince. It is also the fact that he's her ticket to, and that's not in a bad way. That's not like in a greedy way. Like she's looking at him as her, her ticket to paradise, 2 tickets to paradise. It's that both her interests, arguably her stronger interest and stronger curiosity, is the desire to have a soul. But it's paired very much with this longing for him that has existed before she even was aware that she could obtain a soul by being with him. So it's great. It's very convenient that both of the things she's longing for can be achieved simply by having the opportunity to get with this prince. Therefore she crept away silently out of her father's palace, and while everything within was gladness and song, she sat on her own little garden, sorrowful and alone. Then she heard the bugle sounding through the water and thought, he is certainly sailing above, he on whom my wishes depend, and in whose hands I should like to place the happiness of my life. I will venture all for him, and to win an immortal soul, where my sisters are dancing in my father's palace. While my sisters are dancing in my father's palace, I will go to the sea witch, of whom I have always been so much afraid, but she can give me counsel and help. Okay, here's where we start pumping the brakes here, folks. This is where we start pumping the brakes in both stories. So let's catch up to, at least in this one. Here we go. We've got Daddy, considered to be by many overprotecting, comes in, says, you've been hanging out with humans, you've been on the surface, putting yourself in danger, at least from his perspective. I told you not to do that. This whole shrine to humans and all this stuff that you've been doing, all the reasons why you have not been, like when we had our festivities in our party, the reason why you weren't there is for all this stuff, because you've been over here in your little hoarding grotto. This is knuckle. And you think it's an overreaction, but when you look at the result, look at what happens. You get this. This is what happens to Dad. Because of what she is doing, this is what happens to her dad. And this is what becomes of the this is the fate. This is the result of that rebellion, of trying to find, of obsessing over a life you in theory can't have, that pushes you to seek it from a nefarious source. Those are the consequences. I don't think that's exactly an overreaction. When you see what he is trying to prevent. Now, he doesn't know that all this is going to happen, of course, but that is why rules, that is why we say don't do this. Don't go for this. And now his perspective is, because humans bad, right? Just as much as she's going in her ignorance, she's going, all humans are amazing. Everything's wonderful. Everything is awesome, which is wrong. So too is he wrong to say all humans are bad. And she said, he said, you saved the human. And she's like, yeah, he would have died. He's like, one less human to worry about. So I'm not saying Titan comes across looking great here. He is definitely got you could call him, the word gets overused these days, but you could definitely call him a bit of a bigot. But if nothing else, he definitely has a very strong prejudice and an animus towards humans. We don't hear the justification for that. Is it the reason why he doesn't have a wife? We don't know. It's never described. It's never justified, but he does come on pretty darn strong with his opinion. And he does do all this destruction of her little shrine to humanity down there. And I think, and that as you can tell, that's not in the story. She goes from living it up with, a party on, hey, I've got a great voice, everybody loves my voice, to being very somber and depressed and just going, okay, I'm going to go check out the Sea Witch. From a narrative standpoint, that's kind of weak sauce. They justify it in this one, I think, rightly, by making her dad go overboard, by making him destroy everything in a violent display of anger and wrath. And so it's more out of hurt and also out of rebellion, I would say, that Ariel is able to be, in a manner of speaking, seduced by these creepy little bastards right here. Like, there is no way in heck these creepy little things should be able to woo her, to be able to draw her to them, to be able to convince her to go see the Sea Witch. Especially, Sebastian says that, no, Ariel, she's bad. She's evil. And if you couldn't tell by her minions, you will when you see her. She's evil. This is an evil witch. And even she calls it here, I will go see the Sea Witch, of whom I have always been so much afraid, for a good reason. For a good reason. This is not the Sea Witch that is just misunderstood. This is the Sea Witch who has her own, her own quirky behavior. Or, you know what? They call her a witch, but I know that she's actually not. Like, if Disney and this story had guised the witch, had made her seem to be beautiful and fair, or at least very kind, altered her appearance, made her deceptive, you could understand it. And made her emissaries not look like these little turd muffins, but made them more appealing. Maybe like a purple and pink looking flounder type character, instead of, flounder being the yellow and blue. Make them just a different color flounder. Make them a fish that she's used to, and saying, you know what, she's misunderstood. They call her a witch, but that's because they don't get what she's all about. She's actually more of a, I don't know if a sorceress would be much better, but, to frame it in a way that makes it understandable why she would go to see the witch in both stories. But neither one of them, she outright says, I'm afraid of the Sea Witch, and for good reason, but I'm going to go see her anyway. And in here, we've got these guys saying, hey, this Sea Witch can give you what you want. And again, because, we know from in real life, when kids rebel, they don't say, well, you know what, I'm going to show you, Dad, I'm going to read books and I'm going to get good grades in school. They don't say, you know what, I'm going to go to bed early and do my chores. Like, rebellion is almost always bad. It's, I'm going to get with the guy that you don't want me to get with. I'm going to do drugs. I'm going to get into smoking. I'm going to get involved with a gang. Rebellion is never in a positive direction. It may very well be that the authority is oppressive or is a little too much, but it never drives them to do things that are more productive, or rarely does it drive productivity. It's usually rebellion begets disaster. A rebellion begets a life or a trajectory that is not heading in a good way. They're going to need to get bailed out from that at some point, or turn away from it at some point. And so it is here. But we can understand that. We can relate to that and go, okay, we get the rebellion, but the fact that there is in either story no effort made to make this Sea Witch in any way appealing or good. Look at her. Look at this. We're going to skip ahead here. Whoa. Oh, and also notice this as well. So now she's got this very, like, she just told off, I think it was Flounder or somebody, or maybe it's Sebastian, where she's like, why don't you tell my father? You're good at that. Well, maybe if he had, we could have avoided this disaster. But so this is just pure rebellion, pure spite. Daddy won't let me have my fantasy anymore. Screw that noise. I'm being told I can have a way. There's a way for me to get what I want. And since it can't happen naturally, I'm going to allow myself to be deceived, or I'm just going to outright rebel. And now she swims. Let's see. Do we get, yep. So, okay, maybe you're not going to see exactly. Right here, what is she seeing? She's seeing a bunch of these. Look, a bunch of them, okay? Not one or two. She is seeing a ton of these little, what do you call them, little algae people on her way into the witch's palace. We're going to, this is going to be important in a little bit. There is no mistake for either version of this Little Mermaid. She is getting in bed with evilness, of wickedness. There is no natural way to achieve what she wants. She is a mermaid. He is a human. That's the way reality is. Instead of accepting that and going, okay, well, I got to move on. I got to find a different way forward. I got to find a way to find pleasure and find life and vitality and a purpose within the context of reality. No, instead of that, I'm going to say, screw that. I'm going to get in bed with wickedness and evil to get what I want. I'm going to seek out a way to pervert and to twist the natural order and the natural way things are in order to get what I want. And I would say at this particular moment, it's kind of neck and neck, because at least with Disney's version, like I said, there seems to be a little bit more of a tentative connection between her and the prince. She knows he's single, and she seems to be into him. She knows at least he likes her voice, and he seems to be smitten with the idea of her, if nothing else. She may think that he will recognize her, because he does. She is leaning over him when he wakes up, and we see that. I can't bring up the screenshot, but there's the sun is silhouetting her a little bit, but you can still see a little bit of her features, which is why when Ursula takes on kind of a counterfeit version of her, he's charmed by her witchy wiles, but it's understandable, because she does look like Ariel to some degree, at least what he's seen of her, but she doesn't know for a fact that he hasn't seen her face, because she was leaning over him when he wakes up, and then she runs off. So she may be thinking, oh, he saw me. He knows who I am. All I have to do is show up, and he'll be into me. So you can kind of understand that a little bit. Doesn't justify going to a freaking witch about it, but it does make it more understandable that she's doing this. Whereas over here, this mermaid has been more of a stalker and has been more piney. It's been a one-way street with her that has caused her a great deal of sorrow. But she does also have the idea that she's going in for a soul, which I would say is a pretty darn good reason, a pretty good motive, where it's like, okay, I don't know that he's going to reciprocate necessarily, but it's worth a shot, because I'd rather have that happen than die. Pardon me for a second. Oh geez, sorry. I'm a very, very busy and important man. Let's see. Okay. This is the problem with I'm essentially doing it live, but I'm not doing it live as a stream, because when you have comments and everything, then it can go all over the place. So I'm doing this, but it's all in one take, just because I'm trying to get it just done and out. So anyway, I will not let that happen again. Mea culpa. So both have somewhat understandable reasons for doing what they're doing, but you have three levels of I don't know how to put this, motivation or ways of processing what exactly they're doing. You have deception or being deceived. You have, as we read in the Snow White story, wanting or willing to be deceived. And then you have just outright no deception. I'm just making a bad choice. So deception, that's what I was saying. If in either story, the witch was a little more ambiguous, we didn't really know, is she good or bad, or at least the way she's presented makes her seem like she's actually very good. She's presenting herself in a way that she not really is. You go, okay, I can feel not only empathy or sympathy for Ariel or the Little Mermaid, but also understanding. We've all been tricked. We all make mistakes. We can all have the wool pulled over our eyes. It happens to the best of us. Being willing to allow yourself to be deceived, like Snow White. Now, granted, in that story, she's 7 years old. The witch has already tried to kill her once, or the queen has already tried to kill her once with the bodice and the lace. Now this other woman comes along, but she's got combs. And it says that Snow White allowed herself to be deceived. She knew better. She knew that it was probably very dangerous, but she wanted the comb so bad that she allowed herself to be tricked. That is, to me, understandable for a 7-year-old, less understandable for teenagers. Somebody who really should know better. You fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Kind of thing has to kind of take precedence at that point. That kind of has to become a reality. But we don't have either one of those here. They're neither deceived nor willing to be deceived. They are outright seeking wickedness. And this is where it started as an adult when I was watching Little Mermaid. This is where it kind of started to be like, what's going on here? Like, am I supposed to be on board with this? Am I supposed to think this is a good thing that Ariel is doing? Am I supposed to be on her side with this? Because you went out of your way to make Triton like this horrible, horrible parent. Like, he couldn't, if he had just come in there and been like, none of this, Ariel, I'll have none of this, leave at once, or something, or maybe he could have destroyed it, but he didn't have to be. And it was so like anti-human. It wasn't just, you don't understand, they're very dangerous, you don't know what could be up there, you don't know anything about them other than these little trinkets that you've gathered. This is not, a thing. Trust your father. Trust me. I know they're very dangerous. Maybe they're not all dangerous, but a lot of them are. It is not a good idea to get involved, and brings down the thing. But maybe once they leave, the fact they went all in, they made him this almost mustachioed villain, like the over the top, one less human, like his animus, the amount that he despises humans is almost comical in just how bad it makes him sound. And then while she's sitting there, while they're all there, I'm just going to destroy everything. So yes, it allows her to see it. At the same time, you're going, Dad, really? Maybe, if you're going to blow up the place, maybe get your daughter out of there. But he does it in front of her so that we can all see it and we can all see her reaction. Daddy, no, please. She's begging him, don't destroy my collection and my shrine. And I'm not saying it's justified, but they go out of their way to make him so horrible that I think we are supposed to believe that this is justified, that what Ariel's doing, her dad's a big meanie weenie, won't let her have what she wants. And so he's driving her into the clutches of this sea witch. But so it's kind of justified. He was a big meanie weenie, so she should be able to go do this. And it's like, no. He's not a good guy. And you kind of went out of your way to make him a bad guy in a way that he's not in this story. And I understand you're doing that to create a motive and a reason for her to rebel. But this rebellion is not in any way condonable. Like, this is not something we look at and go, yeah, okay. I get it. I get it. Go. You don't get what you want, so you go to a witch. That's not where we're at here. So as a child watching this, I'm getting the vibes I think that I'm supposed to get. Big mean authority figure. She's going to go find a way to make her dreams come true, right? That's the vibe we're supposed to get. She's going to go make her dreams come true. That's what Disney's all about. When you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. That's the idea we're supposed to be getting. But from an adult perspective, looking at it going, no, it's still rebellion. So not a great thing in general. And you're going to seek the counsel and the effects of an evil witch, which is kind of redundant, but probably not a good idea. So anyway, let's move on. I just want to hit that part home. So this is where I feel like things start to shift in a bad way. But our original story maintained, you'll see. And then the little mermaid went out from her garden and took the road to the foaming whirlpools beyond which the sorceress lived. Okay, so there we go. Sorceress and witch, same thing. One's not really better than the other one. She had never been that way before. Neither flowers nor grass grew there. Nothing but bare, gray, sandy ground stretched out to the whirlpool, where the water, like foaming mill wheels, whirled around everything that it seized and cast it into the fathomless deep. Through the midst of these, so an abyss, essentially. Through the midst of these crushing whirlpools, the little mermaid was obliged to pass to reach the dominions of the sea witch. So very dangerous, very treacherous to get to this sea witch. This is not just like, let me just run next door to the neighborhood sorceress. She's actually having to risk her life, possibly, to navigate her way to this. So, and again, nothing grew there, nothing lived there. We are not supposed to believe that this witch is, the good witch of the West. Is it West or the East? I can't remember which one. From Wizard of Oz. Well, we have good witches, we have bad witches. It's just a bad witch. Just a bad witch. And bad witch and a witch combines to form a word, but I won't say it here because I'm trying to keep it more or less child-friendly. Through the midst of these crushing whirlpools, the little mermaid was obliged to pass to reach the dominions of the sea witch, and also for a long distance, the only road lay right across a quantity of warm, bubbling mire called by the witch her turf moor. Beyond this stood her house in the center of a strange forest in which all the trees and flowers were polypi, half animals and half plants. Okay, so we do have, there we go. So I didn't notice this before. We have the inspiration of those little, what I call them algae things, but I guess they're called polypi or polypi. Polypi? Well, poly meaning multi, right? Multi-formed, I guess. But that is the inspiration for these little grotesque things here. There we go. There's your polypi. There's your part veggie, part animal, part plant. So yeah, kudos to Disney for that. They again, the way they interpreted the elements of the story are fantastic. Or just their attention to detail and the things that they pulled from the story, It's really cool to see it manifested there on the screen. They look like serpents with 100 heads growing out of their ground. Okay, maybe not quite that, but that's even more horrifying, of course. The branches were long, slimy arms with fingers like flexible worms, moving limb after limb from the root to the top. All that could be reached in the sea they seized upon and held fast so that it never escaped from their clutches. The Little Mermaid was so alarmed at what she saw that she stood still, and her heart beat with fear, and she was very nearly turning back. But she thought of the prince and of the human soul for which she longed, and her courage returned. So again, it's intertwining her love also with the soul, which I think, again, gives her a much more profound, meaningful, and understandable drive forward. It's not just for the love, it's also wanting a soul, which that's what I think about. When I think of in the real world, you kind of think of it and go, okay, what would I be willing to give to be with a gal? Particularly a gal that I don't really know. I can't vouch for her character. I can't vouch for how well we're going to get along. All I can say is it's a gal that, I've seen from afar, and I have an affection for. We'll call it love. What am I willing to give for that? Well, it seems like a lot of iffiness. Cost to benefit, it can't be anything too extreme for me to pursue that. But if you say, hey, what are you willing to give to have immortality, to have a life beyond death? A lot. A lot of people are willing to sacrifice many things in order to obtain that, or to do what they think will allow them to obtain that. So, again, we're giving a more solid case for her foolishness, but it is still that. It is still foolishness. She's having to navigate very treacherous terrain, very dire terrain in many different facets in order to get to the witch. And Ariel doesn't have as much. She's being escorted by these creepy things. She does. We don't see it. I can't get on the frame, but she does. One of those little polyp guys does grab her wrist, and she has to pull it free and keep going. So there is a little bit of that, idea of being snatched. But in here, they're much more terrifying sounding, and they don't let go. So there's not really as much danger for her getting to the witch, but it's still, again, there's no mistake here. She is going into a den of wickedness. So what are you doing? Like, I'm no longer tracking with you in this story. We are no longer on the same page. You as a protagonist are making a very stupid, foolish mistake that I can't even empathize with or sympathize with because it's so overtly wrong. Like, you're seeking out evil to screw up the natural order of things so that you can get what you want. That's just wrong on every level. But anyway, the Little Mermaid was so alarmed at what she saw. Okay, courage returned. She fastened her long flowing hair around her head so that the polypi might not seize hold of it. She laid her hands across her bosom, and then she darted forward as fish shoots through the water between the supple arms and fingers of the ugly polypi, which were stretched out on either side of her. She saw that each held in its grasp something it had seized with its numerous little arms as if they were iron bands. The white skeletons of human beings who had perished at sea and had sank down in the deep waters, skeletons of land animals, oars, rudders, and chests of ships, were lying tightly grasped by their clinging arms, even a little mermaid, whom they had caught and strangled. And this seemed the most shocking of all to the little princess. So yeah, we're getting a lot of similarities with the two different versions, in that the mermaids are victimized here as well. She came now to a space of marshy ground in the wood where large fat water snakes were rolling in the mire. Okay, so kind of like the eels. What are they called? Flotsam and jetsam, I think. Showing their ugly drab-colored bodies. In the midst of this spot stood a house built with the bones of shipwrecked human beings. There sat the sea witch, allowing a toad to eat from her mouth, just as people sometimes feed a canary with a piece of sugar. She called the ugly water snakes her little chickens. Okay, so yeah, same thing. Or her little babies. And allowed them to crawl all over her bosom. Lots of bosoming going on here. I know what you want, said the sea witch. It's very stupid of you. I mean, come on. I gotta think of a different voice. It's very stupid of you, but you shall... that hurts my voice, never mind. I know what you want, said the sea witch. It's very stupid of you, but you shall have your way, and it will bring you to sorrow, my pretty princess. She's laying all her cards out on the table. Again, folks, there's no deception going on here. It is very stupid of you, but you shall have your way, and it will bring you to sorrow. So again, no deception here. You idiot. Like, what? Yeah. You want to get rid of your fish's tail and to have two supports instead of it, like human beings on Earth, so that the young prince may fall in love with you. I mean, okay, I get it. Guys are not terribly complex creatures, but just because you have two legs doesn't mean we're going to fall in love with you. But hey, such is the simplicity of the ridiculousness going on here. And that you may have an immortal soul. So she does know that's a big draw as well. And then the witch laughed so loud and disgustingly that the toad and the snakes fell to the ground and lay there wriggling about. You are but just in time, said the witch, for after sunrise tomorrow I should not be able to help you till the end of another year. I will prepare. Sounds very much like a used car salesman, doesn't it? Well, you just so happen you're getting the tail end of our super deal. What's it going to take to get you into this ridiculous contract? That we're putting out here. Definitely sounds like she's, you got me. We're almost out of stock, almost sold out. Call now before what is it? Offer last while materials exist or while it's in stock. Anyway, I'll prepare a draught for you, with which you must swim to land tomorrow before sunrise and sit down on the shore and drink it. Your tail will then disappear and shrink up into what mankind calls legs. And you will feel, here's a big thing, you will feel great pain as if a sword were passing through you. But all who see you will say that you are the prettiest little human being they ever saw. You will still have the same floating gracefulness of movement, and no dancer will ever tread so lightly. But at every step you take, it will feel as if you were treading upon sharp knives, and that the blood must flow. If you will bear all this, I will help you. So this is a raw deal. You think the Disney version is horrible. This is a raw deal. You're stupid for doing it. It's going to make you sorrowful, but if you want it, fine. I'll give you a potion. You drink it, you get your legs. It's going to feel like you're being stabbed through the stomach when this happens. And then every step that you take, even though you will move with floating gracefulness of movement and no dancer will ever tread so lightly, every step you take will feel as if you were treading upon sharp knives. How is this a good deal? How is this? Everything should be going, nope, get the heck out of there. As if the peril getting there wasn't bad enough. And you see that the difference here, I think, is also very important. Here, the mermaid this isn't like an impulsive thing. Like I said, this is not just I'm rebelling against my dad. I want to get what I want. She is forcing her way through over distance, over treacherous terrain, through some very obvious and dastardly hazards. She's meeting with a evil witch in a house of bones made from dead things, including, mermaids. And she's being told outright by this wicked creature how stupid she's being and how bad of idea this is. And she's being told, you are going to be in great pain. You're going to look great, but you're going to be in great pain with every step you take. So not only I'm going to give you legs, but they're going to be defective. They're not going to be great legs. They're going to be functional, but they're going to hurt you. These are crappy legs. That's all I got to say. These are crappy legs. I'm not willing to sign a deal for crappy legs, but again, now these are absent, as you know, in the Little Mermaid story, the Disney version. The idea that she will be in any pain whatsoever is not mentioned. The idea that the steps she take will be an agony to her is never mentioned. The closest we get to any of this, it says, you will be graceful in your movement. No dancer will be able to tread so lightly. And in the Little Mermaid, the Disney version, we get body language, essentially. You can seduce with your body, with your wiles, with your eyes. You can seduce this guy. So definitely have a little bit of a mismatch there. And in the Disney version, Ursula makes no bones about being evil and about being wicked, but she doesn't say, she tries to make the deal sound good. She's like, these poor unfortunate souls in pain and need, this one longing to be thinner, this one wants to get the girl. Do I help them? Yes, I do. So let's go take a quick look at that part. So all of this is I mean, again, no mistake is made from character design to her song, to what she says. There is no attempt made to hide the fact that she is an evil being. None whatsoever, which makes Ariel's foolishness all the more hard to watch. But she does at least try to make it sound like it's a good thing, and she's benevolent, and she's poor unfortunate souls. I have so much compassion for people like you. Yes, I may be evil, but I do good things. And here's her saying, and this is where she loses. This is where Ariel should have seen an issue. So remember, we saw she floated over. Boom. Ariel just floated over an entire carpet of these little critters, right? In the song, Ursula says, now it's happened once or twice. Someone couldn't pay the price, and I'm afraid I had to rake them across the coals. And then she shows this. So what she's saying is, once or twice, the deal didn't quite work out. I do make fair deals. I make good deals. I help the people in my evilness. And once or twice, maybe it didn't work out. And unfortunately, I had to kind of cash in on it. And here's the result. And Ariel, having seen hundreds of these little bastards, doesn't really seem to connect. No, this is not, whatever the deal I'm going to get is, it's going to be a raw deal. It's not going to be good. Doesn't look like there's a lot of people who are coming out on a good side of this. They are definitely being screwed here. That should be a warning sign. Even if you want to ignore everything else and the very obvious evilness of what the area that you're in, you're being lied to. And in this one, at least in the fairy tale version, the witch is very upfront. You're stupid, dumb idea, it's going to suck, but I'll give it to you anyway. Here, there's a pretense of evil trying to be like, yes, evil is cool and evil is whatever, but I'm benevolent too. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. Ridiculous. But the fact that Ariel does not seem to really register that. Now, you do see this reaction afterward. She seems to have this moment of going, she's obviously trying to pull away, or she's having second thoughts perhaps. So kudos to her for that, but not enough for her to bail on the deal. So we're getting close. We're going to skip ahead to, there's all this. Little foreshadowing here. We'll come back to this, but remember this. You know where I'm going with it. Remember. Okay. All right. So we have, but every step you take, if you will bear this, I will help you. Yes, I will, said the little princess in a trembling voice as she thought of the prince and the immortal soul. Again, making it very clear, she understands this is crap, but she wants that soul and she wants the prince. And this is not a guarantee of either one of them, but she's willing to risk it for the soul and the prince. But think again, said the witch, for when once your shape has become like a human being, you can no more be a mermaid. You will never return through the water to your sisters or to your father's palace again. And if you do not win the love of the prince, again, indicating this is not a surefire bet. I'm not guaranteeing you this is going to happen. If you do not win the love of the prince, so that he is willing to forget his father and mother for your sake, and to love you with his whole soul, and allow the priest to join your hands, get married, then you will never have an immortal soul. The first morning after he marries another, your heart will break and you will become foam on the crest of the waves. So again, really hard to get on board with this particular little mermaid, because to quote Lando, this deal is getting worse all the time. Like this is just like, she's like, no. Okay. This is a horrible deal. I'll take it. No. It gets worse. Much, much worse. Here's the rest of the deal. And I will do it, said the little mermaid, and she became as pale as death. So she clearly understands that what she's doing is wrong and dumb and foolish, but she's going to go through it anyway. To Ariel, to Disney's credit, they try to cushion the blow a little. They try to make it awesome, and we don't have any of this. Now, again, this is laying it all out. There's no deception here. This is exactly, you get what you get. With Ariel, there is some obfuscation of the truth. And like we said before, Ursula tries to convince her, because now at this point in the parallel, Ursula's already said, you must give me your voice. And my voice? And as we know in this story, it's more important because that's the link, the definitive link that Eric has, that Prince has to Ariel. He doesn't really recognize her by face, as we'll see, doesn't recognize her visually, but he knows her voice. And so it seems that Ursula, who has been watching all of this, is making this exception, or making this clause, the cost of this transformation, specifically because she knows without her voice, Ariel is not going to be able to really make any progress. But she does say, in few words, you can still seduce him. He's a guy. Body language, throw yourself at him, bat your eyes. You can seduce this guy and get him to kiss you anyway. It's not going to be that hard. Don't worry about it. And Ariel's like, okay. But in this one, we haven't even got to the worst part yet. We're still talking about all the normal consequences and how horrible this is going to be. This is an all or nothing thing. And notice that there's not a 3-day time limit on this one, which again, understand, I think that's good for Disney. When you have a ticking clock, that is one of the great ways to add that urgency. I think it would be almost obligatory for this movie. It was very, very smart, and I mean, kind of a no-brainer. You've got to put some kind of constraints on this to force the action, to try to give it some urgency, which you need in a movie. Whereas here, when he marries somebody else. So it's not even if he doesn't fall in love with you. It's literally if he marries somebody else, it will break your heart and you will die. Here we go. Now we're getting to the worst part. I will do it, said the Little Mermaid, became as pale as death. But I must be paid also, says the witch. This deal is getting worse all the time. And it is not a trifle that I ask. You have the sweetest voice of any who dwell here in the depths of the sea or on the earth, as we are told, and you believe that you will be able to charm the prince with it also. But this voice you must also give to me. The best thing you possess will I have for the price of my draught. My own blood must be mixed with it, that it may be as sharp as a two-edged sword. And again, saying outright, this is a two-edged sword. This is not a good deal. This is not a, you take a little bit of a hit and you get what you want. This is a double-edged deal. But if you take away my voice, said the Little Mermaid, what is left for me? Your beautiful form, your graceful walk, your body language, and your expressive eyes. Surely with these you can enchant or enchain a man's heart. Well, have you lost your courage? Put out your little tongue that I may cut it off as my payment. Then you shall have the powerful draught. It shall be, said the Little Mermaid. Then the witch placed her cauldron on the fire to prepare the magic draught. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. We don't see that word a whole lot these days. So to Disney's credit, because I remember when I did watch this as an adult, I was like, wow, like she literally is saying, Ursula is saying, seduce him. Like that's not even love. Because I'm pretty sure she just needs the kiss. It doesn't have to be, maybe it has to be true love's kiss, but either way, body language isn't going to do it. Well, body language may get you a kiss. It may seduce the guy, but that there may be no love whatsoever in that. And I was like, wow, that seems really kind of messed up. That's the messaging we're getting here. And granted, it's coming from an evil source, so it's understandable, but like really, like you can seduce this guy. But that's in the original as well. She literally says, your beautiful form, your graceful walk, expressive eyes, your feminine wiles, your allure will be enough to capture his heart. You don't need your voice. You don't need to be able to communicate. You can just present yourself as a warm body, and your beauty alone will be able to get the job done. Cleanliness is a good thing, said she, scouring the vessel with snakes, which she had tied together in a large knot. So even the wicked witch, even this evil witch, believes that cleanliness is next to godliness. Obviously, she wouldn't say it exactly like that. Cleanliness is a good thing. It's funny, again, these little drops in there. Even wicked people, ladies, even wicked beings believe in cleanliness. Then she pricked herself in the breast and let the black blood drop into it. The steam that rose formed itself into such horrible shapes that no one could look at them without fear. Every moment the witch threw something else into the vessel, and when it began to boil, the sound was like the weeping of a crocodile, which I don't know that I've ever heard crocodile weep. That's an interesting turn of phrase. When at last the magic draught was ready, it looked like the clearest water. There it is for you, said the witch. Then she cut off the mermaid's tongue so that she became dumb and would never speak again or sing. Big deviation here. Obviously, in this one, and I will say I am very impressed with the music in The Little Mermaid. again, this is not ever questioning the quality of the production. I think when I think of like the Ariel song, I think of it like Jaws. In that Jaws was very simple. It's two notes. With only two notes, was able to instill this terror and this dread and this impending doom type thing associated with the shark. And it's kind of the same thing. Ariel's song is very, very simple. Well, I can't sing, so I'm not going to try. But you know what I'm saying? It's not this long, elaborate thing. It's not some, pop song. It's not. It is no lyrics, and it's just a very simple few notes that's more or less repeats. And it's very beautiful. It's very compelling. And that whole process of that being drawn out of her voice or drawn out of her is very beautiful. I don't, yeah, well, I mean, just the animation, very beautiful. And that whole thing where it's like plucking it out of her. Beautiful, beautiful imagery there. And just very well done. And not nearly as terrifying as having her tongue cut out. Now, I do want to say this, because I was thinking about this the other day. When we look at these old fairy tales, Snow White, we have give me her liver, give me her lungs. In this one, we have cut out her tongue. We have a witch being tortured to death by having to dance with hot iron shoes on her feet. There's a lot of grimness in these fairy tales. And a lot of people say, man, they were really messed up back then. They were there to terrify kids. And we now have a sensibility, it seems, now where we go, you know what? Kids, we probably aren't ready to do that. Even though when Walt Disney adapted Snow White in 1937 from the early 1800s, he still kept the fact that the queen wanted her heart. Like, he left that in the movie. He didn't have to do that. That was going above and beyond. But even in 37, it was like, no, there needs to be some horror to this queen. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know why he left that in there. But even then, it wasn't like, oh, we can't have this idea of this very gruesome or grotesque type thing being done to somebody or being asked or being mentioned, for the sake of little kids. They need to be exposed to this kind of wickedness and to be able to see it for what it truly is. And now we live in a time where people say, well, we get away from those barbaric stories. We don't want our kids to be exposed to this kind of horror. We don't want to have a situation where her tongue is being cut out. That's not kid friendly. We're just going to have her voice taken away. And yet, when you look at how what the ratings in movies now mean, the amount of profanity, the amount of gore, the amount of violence that can be seen in movies that are more for kids, it's slowly been creeping up. You've got kids playing video games, and look, this is not a lambasting of video games or movies are saying, oh, these are bad for people. But I'm just pointing out, you can have a 6 or 7 year old playing Mortal Kombat. Maybe not all parents, hopefully, but and I'm talking about modern day Mortal Kombat, where you're ripping people's intestines out and doing. I mean, just I'm not going to describe it all, but it's very grotesque stuff. And, you got a Grand Theft Auto where you're running over people and everything. And I'm not saying I would still say cutting out a tongue is more graphic than running somebody over, but you get my point. Our media, well, we're looking at these fairy tales, these things that are supposed to be instructing kids. And we go, we don't want to have it be too gruesome or too overt. I mean, or too dark for kids. And yet in almost every other way, our media is getting more and more graphic, more and more deranged, more and more depraved, more and more grotesque. And the age of exposure is getting younger and younger. Kids in school, on the internet, like it or not, a kid could get on YouTube at the age of 5 because they can navigate at that age, even if younger, and watch a Mortal Kombat video, watch any number of snippets and clips from other movies and franchises where you're seeing people being blown apart or whatever. We are no longer at a stage where we can say we're trying to protect the innocence of children. The internet has kind of blown that out of the way. And yes, there may be some parents out there who put parental guidelines on there and they do watch what the kids watch, make sure the kids don't watch certain things. But on the whole, I think there is just a deluge of exposure. And so while I initially reflexively thought, okay, yeah, cutting out her tongue would have been pretty rough. And to be fair, 1989, the internet, I think, did exist in some form, but AOL and that whole thing didn't really start until like 95, 96, 97, like at least where I grew up. So we don't have the internet. You don't have that exposure. So there is a little bit more of a barrier there. There is still, Mortal Kombat is still, it's still kind of graphic and everything, but it's still being largely played by older kids. And I would say that there's a bigger cushion between the exposure and the extent of the exposure and how easily children are exposed to it back in the 1989 than there is today. So that being said, I'm not going to hold 1989 to the same standards we have today or the same situation. But the idea but you notice we don't have a problem creating more and more games and movies and shows that feature more adult and graphic content, but yet we still kind of seem to think that children content should be avoiding it when it is done. Now, I'm not saying that I'm an advocate for it necessarily, or that we'd want to see like, pulling out tongue, cutting tongue off, but kind of like what they did with when the witch died. You see her fall off the cliff, you see the vultures smile and start circling. You never see her actually splat. You don't see the boulder hit her, but you understand she fell and she died, and now the vultures are going to go feast on her. You don't see the heart. You see a little logo of a heart on the box, but you don't see the heart being cut out, or you don't see her open the box and pull the heart out. It's presented to her by the huntsman. It's like, okay, I've got the heart now. Here, you could insinuate the cutting out of her tongue with the without having to actually show it. But, and this is where, I think I mentioned earlier, pretty sure I've said a lot, but earlier on, I said there's a place where the Disney version and the original story diverge, and Disney goes way off on its own story. This is that moment. It's not pivotal. It's not because of this moment, but this moment begins to redefine these two different stories and make them very foreign to each other in a way that didn't happen with Snow White. I don't think it happened with Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty. I'd have to revisit those stories. And hey, if you're interested in me doing that, let me know. I don't even know that anybody's watching this far into the video, but if you are, let me know, and I'll be happy to look at these stories and see how they vary from Disney's versions. But we are going to just go further away. And we see that here where this is a permanent thing, that she is going to be giving up her ability to speak and sing forever. Like, that's never coming back. You even if he loves you and he falls in love and you spend the rest of your life together, you are not going to be able to speak or sing again. Little Mermaid here, it's temporary. She gets her voice back. Everything is honky-dory if she gets the prince to kiss her. She gets her voice, she gets her legs, she gets everything that she wants. It's totally fine. You are giving these up. This is a sacrifice you are knowingly making. You're getting your defective legs that are going to hurt you every time you take a step, and you have no voice and no way to sing for the rest of your life. This is the cost of witchcraft. This is what it takes to pervert and twist the natural order. In order to make your fantasy a reality, this is the cost. And I want to make a point here as well. I've heard people say, it's really messed up that it seems to be saying that a woman needs to give up her voice to be with a man. That's a very feminist, modern perspective of this, but it's very inaccurate. Whether or not it has its own merits on its own, about that, like, that's not the thing. Eric and the prince, neither one of them know any of this is going on. The man is not saying, you need to give me your voice. You need to give up your voice for me. That is not a quid pro quo. That is not, in order to be with a man, you have to give up your voice. That is not the man demanding that. That is evil wickedness saying, this is the cost of you getting what you want. There's no natural way for you to get it. In order for you to get it this way, this is the cost that I'm exacting from you. This is what my magic, this is what my sorcery is going to take from you. This is the price you pay in order to get what you want. And most of us are going, that's not worth it. Well, how about I just keep my voice, keep everything, and just live happily under the water? Well, just live down here and find a nice merman and live out my 300 days. Now, again, that element of the soul does kind of tug at you a little bit, not going to lie. Otherwise, this would be just ludicrous. And at least Little Mermaid, even though the Disney version, they've cut out the soul aspect of it, it has been made less bad. We don't have the soul's, we don't have the pain when she's walking. We don't have a permanent loss of her ability to speak and sing. She's not losing her tongue forever. So a little bit different, but that's where we start seeing a distinction. This story is now facing a direction that says, okay, here's the premise. In this case, we won't even call her rebellious, but a girl who has had her thoughts and her mind and her focus and her attention diverted to a fantasy, to an alternate reality in which there really is no feasible way to exist in that way. She has allowed herself to be drawn to that. She's allowed herself to be seduced by that and has now forsaken her garden. She has forsaken her relationships. She's forsaken her love and enjoyment of all the wonderful splendor that is very clearly laid out. Sorry, my nose keeps itching here. That is laid out for this fantasy. In the Disney version, we have rebellious girl going, I want what I want. I want my fantasy. I want this dreamy prince guy. I want these things. I want to be where the people are. I want this life that I can't have. Screw you, dad. And I don't think it's purely screw her, dad. It's not, but it is rebellious in nature. It is an immediate reaction to the grief that she feels after her father destroys her shrine there. And so I'm going to seek out evil and I'm going to trade these things in order to get what I want. But here with the fairy tale, her life is skewing in a very bad direction. The premise is indicating things are not going to turn out well for her. How can they turn out well? She's got her tongue cut out. Like even in the best of circumstances, and she's somehow able to make things work, she still is never going to sing or talk again. She has lost something fundamental to her being. She's compromised it, given it away for this opportunity. And that cost is permanent. Whereas this mermaid is leaving, the Disney version is leaving it open. Well, it can all turn around. If she just finds the answer, gets the answer, all her problems go away and she will get everything that she wants. So it's leaving an out for her to have a happily ever after that's not macabre or kind of like, well, it's a mixed bag. But that also kind of misses the point of this story, which is this is foolishness. This is the cost. This is the price of foolishness, of aligning yourself with wickedness, of seeking out evil to get your ends met, to get what you want done. This is what happens. This is what you have to give up. This is what it's going to take. It's not going to be like you could be whole and live a happy life if you will choose to turn away from this fantasy and this pursuit of this. You can have your tongue. You can have everything pretty much, other than, in this case, the soul. But as we're told by virtue of the story, that's not supposed to be the end of the world. I mean, it technically is, but it's not supposed to be some horrible thing that every other mermaid is okay with it. And in the Disney version, it's that the cost isn't as high, but it's still foolishness. The foolishness is still there. You're still aligning yourself with wickedness. What are you doing? This is not the right thing to do, but she's being given an out already. We've got to remember, we got to get to the happily ever after part, right? And that's where I'm saying, I think there's a divergence here. One is kind of committing to the idea, this is a foolish mistake, and we're going to see what happens when you make a foolish choice. Disney, you're going to make a foolish choice, but somehow that's going to still lead to happily ever after. And I don't think that makes sense. I don't think you can start with a premise, I'm going to be lost in a fantasy and make a foolish choice, align myself with evil, be enabled, be empowered by evil to pursue what I really want, and it's going to work out okay for me. That to me, those two statements should never line up. That should never be the end of the sentence. I indulged in wickedness, overtly understood that I went to wickedness, that I gave up something of myself, crucially of myself, to engage with wickedness, to engage with evil, to get what I want, and I'm going to live happily ever after. How does that work? How do we get there? And that is the shift. And that's where we're going to see things are going to go downhill for our fairy tale princess, and our Disney princess, not so much. She's as you know, I'm sure if you've seen the story, you know, she gets everything that she wanted. Her dad goes, well, I was wrong. And what did she end up having to give up? What did she end up having to sacrifice? What did she end up having to risk? Again, initially her voice. She's going, okay, that's fine. I don't need my voice. I can do without it to get things done. And then I get my voice back and everything is honky-dory. But we'll get to it. We'll get to it in a minute. There's one other point I want to make here before we move on. I found it peculiar. Why did, there's a huge downside in the fairy tale already. Why did Anderson include this idea that she would have these legs, but that when she takes any step, she will be very graceful. She will move with a grace that nobody else could parallel, but she will be in agony as she does this. It will be like knives stabbing through her feet. Why would you include that there? And this is just a funny thing. I'm not claiming that this is what he meant to do or what he was saying. I'm not trying to read too far into it, but high heels. Originally, I didn't know this. High heels originally were, oh, you can't see because I got that thing up still. I mean, not that you can't really see the text anyway, but, oops. You can see, I mean, this is the history of high heels. I haven't read all of it, but high heels or heels initially were for men. And they were only about this thick. They were a lot broader, and they were for in combat when you were, or just riding, it was to keep your feet in the stirrups. So you'd have that heel, the lip could catch on the stirrup and keep them from sliding off. So it was a functional thing, predominantly used in the military and warfare. But it then became a fashion statement, as a lot of things did. You know, that you see those very elaborate suits of armor. It's like those were not meant to be fought in. Those are just, it's using military as a fashion statement. And so it became a fashion statement for men for quite some time. And then I haven't got quite down where it changed, but it became fashionable for women. And then the heels became, and they were no longer functional as much. The heels became, narrower and longer and taller. And then they became a fashion thing. And it was right around, here we go. Popular in the 16th century, eventually a predominantly female fashion item. The 18th century saw the emergence of stiletto heels and pointed toes for women, further emphasizing the gender nature of high heels, essential part of women's fashion through the 19th and 20th centuries. So it may not have been a new invention when Anderson was writing this in 1836, but we were right at the point where it was becoming commonplace to have these stiletto-heeled, narrow shoes. Arguably, look, I've never worn high heels. I have no intention of doing it. All I can say is everything that I've looked at them, when I actually, look at the cushioning, look at how they're shaped, look what they make your foot do, they look incredibly uncomfortable. They look incredibly painful. Ladies, you can let me know if that is the case. They look absolutely miserable, but they accentuate your calf and they make you a little bit taller. So, but and we know now, there's a way to walk in heels that looks more sensual, looks more provocative. So this idea, but it does make me wonder if this was kind of like an analogy or kind of a nod to that. You're going to move gracefully. You're going to look very alluring. You're going to look amazing, but you're going to be in pain the entire time. And that also ties in with the clams that were attached to the mermaid and how they actually hurt. There was a pain there. And she said, pride comes with pain, or pride, comes from pain, or pain, pride begets pain. I don't remember, but it was a very much like a, hey, the things you wear, the things that make you give you the prestige and the pride and the this and the that, they're going to hurt you. They're going to harm you. And I don't know, if they were still doing it in the 1800s, but we know they had the corset thing where it'd be pulled in and it could be very difficult to breathe. Bottom line, women's fashion is very painful, has been very painful, and certainly would have been in the 1800s when this was written. And so I just thought that was interesting that, and let me tell you, ladies, I just tell you from a guy's perspective, I have never once looked at a gal and thought, you know what? There's something between us. There's some attraction. There's some allure here, but she's just a little too short. If she was only taller, and not taller fundamentally, not taller all the time, but just if she could be made taller sometimes, I'd be interested. Or she's amazing. She's the love of my life, but her calves, they're just not as pronounced as I'd like. I'd really like her to have nicer calves, even only temporarily. when she wakes up in the morning, her calves won't be nice, but if she can put something on, I don't know, that makes her calves look really nice, then I'd be with her. If you don't have to wear heels, don't wear heels. I mean, unless you want to. I mean, if you want to, great. But like I said, they look incredibly uncomfortable. I would not wish that on anyone. What the heck are you doing? And I think possibly these two things we have, the clams on the body and the stabbing pain in the foot. Every time she takes a step, she will look beautiful, but it will hurt her. Seems to be kind of tying into that idea that there you can have the beauty, you can have the pride and the glamour and the glitz, but it's going to be painful. Like it doesn't come without a cost. So anyway, that may have nothing to do with it. Could be way off the beaten trail, but that did just occur to me. I thought of that, and I immediately went to it. I was like, I wonder what high heels were doing back when he wrote this. Like, were they a thing? Were they still kind of more practical? But no, they were in their full swing of women's fashion, being very uncomfortable looking, at least. And I don't know. You can let me know. Like I said, if you're like, hey, they're not all that bad, you just get used to them. Cool. But that seemed to me to be where that came from. Anyway. So here we are moving. Like I said, I know we took a lot of time on this part, but because for me it is pivotal. This is where things start to go south for the story in general, but also where Disney's story starts to diverge, and where I, as an adult watching this, go, "What are we doing here, story? Like, why are we?" And here's the crux of the matter. This Little Mermaid story, the original fairy tale, is, as kind of Snow White, it is a cautionary tale. It is, when you do these things, this is what happens. Now in this one, we're going to see there is a redemptive element to it. And it's a very uplifting. It kind of tugged at the heartstrings a little bit. I remember getting a little misty over it. There is redemption of it, but it is not happily ever after in the way that she intends, in the way that she wants. You don't pursue fantasy, get in bed with evil and witchcraft, and get what you want. That's not how it works. And the idea with Disney that is in fact the path to getting what you want, to me, there's a disconnect there. So this is a cautionary tale. When you do these things, these are the consequences. Disney, when you do these things, here's how awesome it is. Very different approach to it. And I don't think, whereas with Snow White, when you shifted from let's be less cautionary and more about Snow White, I think it benefited the story, and it does work out without really having to fudge the essence of the story. With Little Mermaid, they take out the whole soul aspect, arguably, whether that's a good idea or not. But then that means that it's no longer about getting a soul. It means that can't be the uplifting ending. It now has to be her getting that love, but we're still going to have her go about it in a really stupid, foolish, horrible way. That doesn't work. I'm watching this going, why is this the story? It would be morbid, but at least it would be okay. Hey, she's made a mistake. Now watch what happens. Watch the consequences of her making this choice. You can't do that with Disney. With Disney, you try to say, watch the consequences. It's like, I don't understand. She got everything she wanted. What's the downside? Why was this a bad idea? Okay, so here we go. Okay. Every moment the witch threw something else into the vessel, and when it began to boil, the sound was like weeping crocodile. Again, don't know what that's all about. There it is for you, said the witch. And we've heard about crocodile tears, but that's not a noise thing. That's more like a... Anyway, when at last when Magic was ready, it looked like the clearest water. There it is for you. Then she cut off the mermaid's tongue so that she became dumb and would never again speak or sing. If the polypi should seize hold of you as you return through the wood, said the witch, throw over them a few drops of the potion, and their fingers will be torn into 1,000 pieces. But the little mermaid had no occasion to do this, for the polypi sprang back in terror when they caught sight of the glittering draught which shone in her hand like a twinkling star. So this is acid. I mean, it says shatter, but like this is toxic. You know, we talk about like, man, this stuff get like, what is it? You can pour Coca-Cola on like a penny and like you rub it and it cleans it. I think it was something like that. And you're like, and this is what we're drinking. I think it's very telling. Like this stuff is so toxic and so dangerous that even these little creepy things are going, nah. Oh, I promised you that we'd get back to this. I guarantee this, the internet is wide. The internet is vast. I can almost guarantee you that I am not the first person to think of this, to realize this, but I do think it's worth pointing out anyway, if you have not had this presented to you, because I've never seen it before. I haven't seen this presented to me. But, oops, this right here. Nope. You saw it already, but I really, come on. Dang it. Okay, I really got to figure out another way to do this. It's just doing screenshots of everything would be, I just need better production value, that's all. There we go, finally. You notice anything weird about this, folks? Do you notice anything strange about this? Well, other than right now it's Ari. She's literate. There's verbiage above the contract, or above where she signs. She can read, and more importantly, she can write. Unless we are to believe that Ariel is only capable of, as a princess, royal princess, she's only capable of writing her name and nothing else. Ariel can write. What is her biggest hurdle in this movie? When she goes up there trying to communicate with Eric, trying to convince him to, or get him to kiss her in time to make her transformation and everything permanent. And but the barrier to that is she can't talk. She can't communicate. Wait, paper, pencil, paper, pen, both things which we have in plenty, at the time of this on land, at the time this story was being told. Eric, I'm the gal who saved you from the shipwreck. Voice was taken by a witch so that I could get the legs to come talk to you. If you kiss me, if we fall in love, I get my voice back and we can live happily ever after. Does this sound good? Circle yes or no. It's a very, very simple thing to do. And yet, that's never an option. We are shown that she has the capability of writing, but she never uses writing to communicate to him directly. Now, I'm going to feel a little silly if there was a part of the movie, because like I said, I haven't watched it all the way through since that second viewing. I've only watched just to make sure, okay, does she really sign her name? She does. Maybe they explain why she can't write her name or why she can't write a note later on. I just thought that was a very, that's a huge plot hole. Huge plot hole. In this story, in the fairy tale, she can't, we're not told she doesn't sign a contract. She doesn't sign her name. There is no writing involved. So we don't have to worry about that as a loophole, as a plot hole. We do have that, however, in this one. And the only thing I will say in Disney's defense, and I say this for anything, if it is not crucial to the plot, it's not really much of a plot hole, because they could have done without it. If everything hinged on her being able to sign a contract, then it would. But as we see here in the fairy tale, she doesn't sign a contract. It can still be done. They could, the witch could have said, by like, as soon as I have your voice, that it's agreed upon. Like here, I give you this, I cut out your tongue, it's a done deal. They didn't have to have her signing the contract. It was for a visual thing. And I think because Ursula, it gives a visual, show not tell. That is something that we have in movies. Ursula can show Triton, the contract with Ariel's name on there. And then of course, then he can put his name over it to take her place. That all happens visually for the most part. And so it makes sense there. But so they added it to help the show not tell aspect of the story, but also creating a pretty decent plot hole in the process, but not one that just undercuts, the story is stupid or it doesn't make any sense, because it was an additional thing. It was there to serve the visuals. It could have done it a different way, but did it. So I give it a pass, but it's still pretty dumb, at least in my perspective. Why? Because you're giving her a way out and then she never uses it. But that wouldn't be fair, I guess. But yeah, so here we go. She's got a potion that even the little polypi things recognize as toxic. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They stay away from her. Again, things in these stories don't just exist. Every line, every word is crafted in a story. So she could have just said, the polypi won't mess with you if you just on your way out. They only get you on your way in. I don't know why. You'd think they'd actually get her on the way out just because the deal's been made. If you die, well, too bad for you. Didn't even have to mention that. Just say you could go out this way, go out the back door, and you don't have to worry about that, or just go straight up. Whatever it is, they go out of the way to say you can tear their fingers into 1,000 pieces with drops of this, but they're not even going to try to mess with her because they're so afraid of what it is. Anyway, she passed quickly through the woods and the marsh, and between the rushing whirlpools, she saw that in her father's palace the torches of the ballroom were extinguished and all were asleep, but she did not venture to go in them, for now she was dumb, and going to leave them forever, she felt as if her heart would break. I mean, that is what the witch actually said. You will never return to see your father or your sisters or anybody else again. In other words, you are forsaking, not in a way of like marriage where we talked about, where the husband leaves his mother and family and father and cleaves to his wife. It's not a permanent separation. It's I am no longer living with you or under you. We are now creating our own entity, our own family together, she and I. The family is still in the picture. You're not literally cutting yourself off from your family. You're just, this is the next phase. This is how you fully embrace your new life together, leaning on each other versus on your parents. The fact that the cost of this potion, this whole scenario is, you now have to forsake your family, the people that actually love and care about you now, the life that you have here and all that it entails, that you are going to have to give up. Deal is getting worse all the time. And to a degree, Ariel doesn't even have to grapple with that. That's not even something she thinks about. I get legs, I go get the prince, dad, sisters. Now, to be fair, they don't really make the sisters much of anything, but dad, family, all the things that I have down here, that's all gone. Don't get to have that anymore. It's very narrow focused, very immature, very foolish. I get what I want. Not even thinking past that. At least here, she's having to come to grips with it, and it feels like her heart would break. So, yeah, but it can't go back now. You're dumb. I got to say, I do appreciate, we know dumb just means to be would not be able to speak, but, dumb also being foolish, I think has a double meaning here, in both stories. She stole into the garden, took a flower from the flower beds of each of her sisters, kissed her hand 1,000 times towards the palace, and then rose up through the dark blue waters. That's the last she's going to spend, the last moment she's going to spend in this. She spent 16 years. Dunzo. The sun had not risen when she came inside of the prince's palace and approached the beautiful marble steps, but the moon shone clear and bright. Then the little mermaid drank the magic draught, and it seemed as if a two-edged sword went through her delicate body. She fell into a swoon and lay like one dead. When the sun arose and shone over the sea, she recovered and felt a sharp pain. But just before her stood the handsome young prince. He fixed his coal-black eyes upon her so earnestly that she cast down her own, and then became aware that her fish's tail was gone, and that she had a pretty pair of white legs and tiny feet as any little maiden could have. But she had no clothes, so she wrapped herself in her long, thick hair. The prince asked her who she was and where she came from, and she looked at him mildly and sorrowfully with her deep blue eyes, but she could not speak. Every step she took was as the witch had said it would be. She felt as if treading upon the points of needles or sharp knives, but she bore it willingly and stepped as lightly by the prince's side as a soap bubble, so that he and all who saw her wondered at her graceful swaying movements. See, again, a graceful swaying. Just saying. She was very soon arrayed in costly robes of silk and muslin, and was the most beautiful creature in the palace, but she was dumb and could neither speak nor sing. So here the stories kind of come back a little bit. We know Little Mermaid, she gets rescued by Eric. Obviously she's not naked. She has a way to clothe herself. She stumbles into his arms. Same kind of thing. Who are you? Where'd you come from? She can't speak. Oh, you lost your voice. Oh, well, then you're not who I thought you were. Okay, there's a problem. But not to be daunted, invites her into the palace. So a very serendipitous thing. She's not found by some hooligans or some ill-intentioned men who do exist in the world. They're both found by their prince very nicely. It works out very well for them in that regard. They're both taken in by the prince, treated very well, dressed, and they are found to be very beautiful. And in this particular case, to walk with grace, that just blows their mind. Beautiful female slaves dressed in silk and gold stepped forward and sang before the prince and his royal parents. One sang better than all the others, and the prince clapped his hands and smiled at her. Now, again, we got female slaves here. Now, understandable why Disney wouldn't put that in necessarily, but you talk about all the wonderful things about humans and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not down on humans. Trust me, I am one of them. But you have this other element. And now it doesn't make it sound like it's, the slavery that we know. They're dancing. And apparently, this is almost like a mating thing, possibly. Like he's getting to pick his wife. I don't know. They use the word slaves. I'm not sure if that's a weird translation or what. But anywho, one sang better than the others, and the prince clapped his hands and smiled at her. This was great sorrow to the little mermaid. She knew how much more sweetly she herself could sing once, and she thought, oh, if only he could know that. I have given away my voice forever to be with him. So we can understand, and I can sympathize to a degree, you gave up a great deal to present yourself to the prince as a viable spouse, as a viable love interest. But even though he's taken you in, and he seems to have some affection for you, he's still has eyes for other women. You are not his one and all. You are not his paramour that you were hoping. You're with him, but you're not with him. And he seems to be enchanted. There's something about the voice. And I think, you could certainly read between the lines with Anderson saying that, that is an important thing. I mean, he's talking about song and singing and everything, but the idea that, it's kind of counter to the whole women being seen and not heard. I remember hearing that or maybe it's children. Well, either way, there's a saying, that you should be seen and not heard. And I think that might have applied to women as well. And this is kind of counter to that the idea is that there's actually great beauty in hearing a woman's voice. And again, in this case, in this fairy tale, it's a song, but that her being able to actually speak her mind and to be able to communicate is actually a wonderful thing. Even though, as we can see here in this enlightened age, being able to speak doesn't necessarily make communication any better. But in theory, it's a good thing. But it seems to indicate that there is a beauty to that, and that is a very attractive thing to be able to hear a woman sing, to be able to hear a woman's voice. The slaves next performed some pretty fairy-like dances to the sound of beautiful music. Then the little mermaid raised her lovely white arms, stood on the tips of her toes, and glided over the floor and danced as no one yet had been able to dance. At each moment, her beauty became more revealed, and her expressive eyes appealed more directly to the heart than the songs of the slaves. So even then, even as beautiful as that is, her body language, and now it doesn't say she was seductive. It was that she was graceful. There was grace evident. And we know she's in great pain. And here we go. Does it say? Yeah. Everyone was enchanted, especially the prince, who called her his little foundling. And she danced again quite readily to please him, though each time her foot touched the floor, it seemed as if she trod on sharp knives. So in spite of the great pain, beauty and grace. Very, very kind of a powerful thing. And that it pleased him. And I don't think it's necessarily, oh, I want to please you some more. It was, hey, He's focused on me. He's paying attention to me. I'm appealing to him. That was the whole deal. I want him to be with me. So she's given it more effort and apparently not gritting her teeth or crying because it feels like her feet are being stabbed with knives. She's still managing to dance gracefully and bear that pain in order to try to woo him. Now, again, we don't have any of this in the Disney version, and I'm not saying it's any less for that, but it's much more of a contemporary kind of courtship where they go on these dates, they get in a little boat and they got the fountain going, kiss the girl, all that good stuff. It's very much, it's she doesn't try, to the credit. Now she does bat her eyes a little bit, but she doesn't try to seduce. She doesn't try to woo. It's more of her little animal friends and Sebastian and everybody who's trying to create a romantic environment and bring them together in some, contrived ways, not in a bad way, but like contriving to get them together, facing each other, looking into each other's eyes, getting close to that kiss. And then of course, Ursula tips the boat because in that story, it's not marriage that will seal the deal. It's just a kiss. Again, different, you could say different values. I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. The kiss, going back to Snow White, the kiss has been significant. It has meant a form of commitment, but not as hardcore as it's going here. Wow, we're almost at 3 hours. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a speed run through this here. The prince said she should remain with him always, and she received permission to sleep at his door on a velvet cushion. This is very peculiar. She should remain with him always, and she could sleep at his door on a velvet cushion. It sounds like she's like a pet. He had a page's dress made for her that she might accompany him on horseback. They rode together through the sweet-scented woods where the green boughs touched the shoulders, and the little bird sang among the fresh leaves. She climbed with the prince to the tops of the high mountains, and although her tender feet bled so that even her steps were marked. Oh, and that's another part that I didn't notice. It's not just that it feels like they're being stabbed. It's that they actually bleed as if they were being stabbed. So that just ups it even more. Steel is still getting worse all the time. She only laughed and followed him till they could see the clouds. And he does not notice this. He's not going, wait, why are your feet bleeding every time you take a step? I guess not. Maybe because, she's wearing shoes. You would think after enough steps, they would puddle out and just turn her socks and stockings red, and they would gush out of her shoes. But we're not going to go too far into those details. But so yeah, it sounds like initially like a pet, but then it's like, okay, then they were friends. They went out hiking, they went out horse riding, they explored together, which is, okay, it looks like it's tracking in a good direction. He seems to, you marry your best friend. They seem to be kind of having that best friend camaraderie, and she didn't mind because she's with him. And so even though the steps and everything were very painful for her and she's literally bleeding, it was okay. She laughed and followed him until they could see the clouds beneath, looking like a flock of birds, swans, I'm sure. And sit on the broad marble steps, for it eased her burning feet to bathe them in the cold seawater. And then she thought of all those below in the deep. So there are moments where she does, the ocean is a soothing balm to her, and it makes her think of what she gave up. So still a little bit of a longing there, but not really enough. And she, of course, she doesn't have a magical crab or fish or anything to keep her company. So she's pretty much just locked in with being the prince's friend, companion, I don't know. Once during the night, her sisters came up arm in arm, singing sorrowfully as they floated on the water. She beckoned to them, and they recognized her and told her how she had grieved them. After that, they came to the same place every night, and once she saw in the distance her old grandmother, who had not been to the surface of the sea for many years, and the old sea king, her father, with a crown on his head. They stretched out their hands towards her, but they did not venture so near the land as her sisters did. So again, mourning. Her family shows up to mourn her. They long for her. They miss her. But they can't traverse that. They can't get any closer, or they don't dare to come any closer. And her sisters come up, and again, they sang sorrowfully. So this is, again, this is not a victimless crime. They don't show this really in the Disney. Again, it's not a net gain here. It's not, well, if you get the prince, you get everything you wanted. No, you're leaving your father behind. Now, it does have the father express a sorrow. There's only one problem, how I'm going to miss her. So we do see the father saying, I'm going to miss you. But she's like, cool, that's all right, Dad. Smell you later kind of deal. But I digress. Like this kind of hits the heart there. It's the loss, the things that she has given up to do this. As the days passed, she loved the prince more fondly, and he loved her as he would love a little child, but it never came into his head to make her his wife. So I'm going to say, personally, probably more like a younger sister, or just, again, kind of like a pet, somebody like that can accompany with it. Really, that's kind of what it comes out to. Is like, it's like a guy taking his dog out for a walk, and they go places, they go hiking and everything, but his affection is still of her. And I don't know if that's because she's dumb. I mean, obviously we can assume that if she could speak at this point, if she could sing, he would have been into her, in theory. But we don't know. But he definitely does not see her as he sees her as a companion of some kind, not wife material. But it never came into his head to make her his wife. Yet, unless he married her, she could not receive an immortal soul. And on the morning after his marriage with another, she would dissolve into the foam of the sea. Just reminding you what the stakes are. Do you not love me best of them all? The eyes of the little mermaid seemed to say when he took her in his arms and kissed her on her fair forehead. So, okay, companion, but not the marrying kind. And so he seems to see the longing in her eyes. And he says, yes, you are dear to me, said the prince, for you have the best heart and you are most devoted to me. You are like a young maiden whom I once saw, but whom I shall never meet again. I was in a ship that was wrecked, and the waves cast me ashore near a holy temple, where several young maidens performed the service. The youngest of them found me on the shore and saved my life. I saw her but twice, and she is the only one in the world whom I could love. But you are like her, and you have almost driven her image out of my mind. She belongs to the holy temple, and my good fortune has sent you to me instead of her. And we will never part. So yeah, it's a very tragic thing. He's saying, you have an amazing heart and you're devoted to me and you remind me very much of somebody who I love, but you're not her and I'll never meet her again. So really just kind of twisting the knife. But again, he's not, it could have gone a lot worse. She could have fallen in love with a guy who was cheating on her, or would have cheated on her. She could have fallen in love with a complete psychopath or an abusive guy. Like she happened to fall in love with a guy who's got a good heart, sees her for who she is. And for people who say, oh, fairy tales, they were all superficial. He says, for you have the best heart. He doesn't say you're the best dancer. He doesn't say you have the beautifulest eyes. He says, you are dear to me. You have the best heart and you are the most devoted to me. Those are not superficial qualities. Those are things to truly love about somebody. And this is written 1836. We're talking 27 years after Snow White. So it wasn't all superficial love and beauty back then. There was an appreciation of the heart, of devotion, of loyalty. But his heart belongs to someone else. And so he sees her, again, as a companion, as a beautiful maiden, but not as somebody that he is prepared to marry. He knows not that it was I who saved his life, thought the little mermaid. I carried him over the sea to the wood where the temple stands. I sat beneath the foam and watched until the human beings came to help him. I saw the pretty maiden that he loves better than he loves me. And the mermaid sighed deeply. Oh, sorry, I misread that. He fell in love with the maiden, not her. So it's not even her in this story. He identifies her by her voice. Here, he actually saw the maiden. It's the one who, it's the one who he woke up to that he thought saved him, not even her. So she reminds him of her, but it's still not her. I sat beneath the foam and watched until the human beings came to help him. I saw the pretty maiden that he loves better than he loves me. And the mermaid sighed deeply, but she could shed no tears. Going back to that phrase earlier, hurts more because cannot cry. He says the maiden belongs to the holy temple, therefore she will never return to the world. They will meet no more. While I am by his side, she's still thinking this. While I'm by his side and see him every day, I will take care of him and love him and give up my life for his sake. Which is a very profound, now on one side of it, she doesn't really have much of a choice because she can't go back into the sea. She can't go back to the life she had. She can't force him to love her. She could run away, but she's living with the prince, pretty good life, and he does treat her very well. So, but that doesn't mean she could have become bitter. She could have become resentful, but instead, while I am by his side, I will take care of him and love him and give up my life for his sake. So there, we're planting the seeds of a selflessness that while she seemed to get into this because of selfishness, because of I want to live up here. I want the prince. I want a soul. And I'm not saying these are horrible things for her to want, but it was kind of the motivation was more self-centered. We're now seeing it shift to going, okay, even if he doesn't reciprocate, I still, because I love him, that wasn't just a willy-nilly thing. That wasn't just a fling. That wasn't just something nice to be said. I actually do genuinely love him. And because of that, I'm still going to take care of him and give up my life for his sake. Now, I'm not saying, that's how women should be, or men for that matter. But the idea that it becomes a selfless act, that her love for him now kind of supersedes her pain, and so many other things. And it now just becomes about loving him and being there for him. Very soon it was said that the prince must marry, and that the beautiful daughter of a neighboring king would be his wife, for a fine ship was being fitted out. Although the prince gave out that he merely intended to pay a visit to the king, it was generally supposed that he really went to see his daughter. A great company were there to go with him. The little mermaid smiled and shook her head. She knew the prince's thoughts better than any of the others. I must travel, he said to her. I must see this beautiful princess. My parents desire it, but they will not oblige me to bring her home as my bride. I cannot love her. She is not like the beautiful maiden in the temple whom you resemble. If I were forced to choose a bride, I would rather choose you, my dumb foundling with those expressive eyes. And then he kissed her rosy mouth, played with her long waving hair, and laid his hand on her heart, while she dreamed of human happiness and an immortal soul. You are not afraid of the sea, my dumb child, he said, as he stood on the deck of the noble ship which was to carry them to the country of the neighboring king. And then he told her of a storm and of a calm, of strange fishes in the deep beneath them, and of what the divers had seen there, and she smiled at his descriptions, for she knew better than anyone what wonders were at the bottom of the sea. Now, I can 100% understand why Disney didn't adopt this part of the story, because it is very, you do kind of miss on the whole, like, I'm still going to love him even though he can't be with me. But this whole, it's a little confusing because he's like, I need to go see the daughter. I don't love her. I would rather be with you, but I'm going to have to marry somebody and it can't be you. I'm guessing because of the whole royalty thing. You know, they're very big on, Disney princess, she shouldn't have to marry. Well, the prince, obviously this isn't Disney, but the prince doesn't seem like he has a choice in the matter either. He's going to probably have to marry this gal, whether he likes her or not. He would much rather be with his foundling who resembles the gal that he met. And now I'm confused at this point. It's been a while. My brain's going crazy. I don't know if he's misconstruing the girl for the Little Mermaid, but apparently, if nothing else, they resemble. The bottom line is, it's not going in the right direction. It's not going in a good direction. But like I said, I think Disney does well with the ticking clock and the idea that Ariel needs to get this to come together before time runs out. Whereas here, it's just kind of lingering on. But we're getting more character from the mermaid. We're getting more of her heart and her compassion for him. And we're getting more his kind of conundrum, his difficulty of, I would choose to be with you, that he does adore her. He kisses her on the lips. So to say that there's a fondness for her is an understatement. You could say that there is a love that he has for her. And I would rather choose you. Like he would, if he had a choice, choose her as his wife. But what I don't understand is, would that have changed, or how would that have changed if she could sing, if she could talk? Because it sounds like he still isn't able to, unless because she is dumb, because she is a foundling, she has this category about her that makes her ineligible. That could very well be. The story doesn't seem to tell us that, that a woman who is, not able to speak is considered lesser than or not marryable. But you can understand maybe to some degree, if you're talking about nobility and everything, there's problems if you can't talk, if the communication's not there. Again, it could teach her to write. To the point about what I said, now granted not in 3 days, but just as Ariel could have easily written a note to Eric right off the jump, he could teach her how to write, and she could communicate to him as well. But apparently we're not going to pursue that logic, even though we're reading a written story. In the moonlight, when all were on board were asleep, excepting the man at the helm who was steering, she sat on the deck, gazing down through the clear water. She thought she could distinguish her father's castle, and upon it her aged grandmother, with the silver crown on her head, looking through the rushing tide at the keel of the vessel. Then her sisters came up upon the waves and gazed at her mournfully, wringing their white hands. She beckoned to them and smiled, and wanted to tell them how happy and well off she was, but the cabin boy approached, and when her sisters dived down, he thought it was only the foam of the sea which he saw. So they're still mourning, but to her credit, she says she's still happy and well off, that she's still loved, and that she's still able to be with the man that she wants to be with, even if it is not in a marriage sense. So she didn't get what she wanted, and it doesn't seem like she's going to get what she wanted, but she seems to have found a peace with that. So again, we have a divergence here. We have the gal who came in and was willing to do foolish things to get what she thought she wanted. She doesn't get what she wanted, but she's still able to say, okay, I can be happy. in a way that she wasn't able to do apparently under the waves. So she's with her prince, not married to him. She's not getting everything she wanted, but she still apparently is very happy and is trying to tell them, I am happy. Even though they still grieve for her. And yeah, so but again, that says a lot about her character, but we're already seeing you don't get everything. You know, you don't get the thing that you were going after because you went about it the wrong way. But you're getting something kind of close. But here's the thing. Here's why this is important. This is where it gets pretty dicey or pretty impactful. The next morning, the ship sailed into the harbor of a beautiful town belonging to the king, whom the prince was going to visit. The church bells were ringing, and from the high tower sounded a flourish of trumpets, and soldiers with flying colors and glittering bayonets lined the rocks through which they passed. Every day was a festival, balls and entertainments following one another. But the princess had not yet appeared. People said, I'm just kind of trying to get through this because we are really cranking up on the time here. People said that she was being brought up and educated in a religious house where she was learned every royal virtue. And at last she came. Then the little mermaid, who was very anxious to see whether she was really beautiful, was obliged to acknowledge that she had never seen a more perfect vision of beauty. Her skin was delicately fair, and beneath her long, dark eyelashes, her laughing blue eyes shone with truth and purity. So, Anderson is bestowing the same kind of virtues to her as he did to the mermaid. She has these bright eyes with truth and purity. Again, it's a wholesomeness. It's not just, oh, she's hot. There is an indication that she is pure, that she is able to be trusted, and she has a good heart. It was you, said the prince, who saved my life when I lay down on the beach. And he folded his blushing bride in his arms. Oh, I am too happy, said he to the little mermaid. My fondest hopes are fulfilled. You will rejoice at my happiness, for your devotion to me is great and sincere. So apparently, again, I've read this, but I didn't read it in detail. Apparently, not only somehow his bride acted with a woman who he woke up to on the beach that he thought he would never see again is actually this princess. And so the desires of his heart. So this is something that I thought might go a different direction. We're not supposed to think poorly of the prince here. He's not stringing the little mermaid along. He does care about her. He does love her, but his heart has always been for this other girl. And now he finds not only that his princess is, is virtuous and kind and all this, but also is the woman who saved him. And so, or who he thinks saved him. And so he's got everything he wanted. But he, at the same time, is acknowledging also the devotion and sincerity of the Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid, this is where it starts getting, for me, pretty emotional. The Little Mermaid kissed his hand and felt as if her heart were already broken. His wedding morning would bring death to her, and she would change into the foam of the sea. All the church bells rung. I mean, just right there, kissed his hand in that moment, understanding. Because before then it was like, maybe he'll come around. Maybe there's something here. Maybe he won't, maybe this princess that he's supposed to meet, maybe she won't be everything and a bag of chips. But no, she is beautiful. She is the one that he has been yearning for all this time. So in a way it is where it doesn't make him a villain, but in a way it kind of points to points to what I'm saying is that, or I have been saying that, you're in love with somebody, but his heart belongs to somebody else, whether it's for whatever reason it is. And it's not because, she had a great bosom and she had a great, posterior. It's for all the right reasons that he is adoring, and he is very much enamored with this other woman. And so there's no bad guys here. The woman doesn't seduce him. She doesn't see that the Little Mermaid has his eye and finds a way to get between them. Doesn't pull like an Ursula thing where she is deceptive and all that kind of stuff. It literally is just these two were meant to be together. And I think, just now dawns on me, that's kind of also part of the point is, well, now, okay, to be fair, he dies without the Little Mermaid. He does not show up on the beach without the Little Mermaid. So her partaking of his life is what enables him to meet that girl for the first time and be like, oh my gosh, this is the love of my life. And then to find her again. The Little Mermaid was to be a part of his life. Her love and her desire to save him was made their lives intersect and brought her into his life for a purpose. to save him. And then she decided, I want to make that my life, but I can't do that. So now I've got to go and do this other shady stuff to make that, trying to make that happen. But that he and that woman were, you could say they were fated to be together. Like there was a love that they had for each other, and it was not contrived. It was not superficial. It's a very profound love. And that it was not meant for him and the Little Mermaid to be together, but she wanted to pursue that, not wrongfully, but that this wasn't the life for you. You had a place under the waves. Like that's where your place was. And yes, and you saved him. And there was nothing wrong with that because you were allowed to be up there. You were allowed to explore and to see and to witness all this stuff. So you saving his life, that was well within the context and the confines, essentially, of your existence as a mermaid. But you weren't happy with that. You couldn't be pleased with that. You needed to be with him. And so you forfeited all of that to be a part of this other life, this other existence, but it wasn't meant to be. And through no fault of his or his wife, his bride, you weren't it. So you're now kind of out of place in many ways. But again, beautiful, beautiful sentiment. Like she's enduring all this, being with him, being there for him, and felt like her heart was already broken. Like that's a death knell. She knows there's no longer a chance that he may warm enough to her that there could ever be a possibility of a future together. That ship has sailed. She's now faced with this reality, that she is going to die. All the church, okay, perfumed oil is burning in costly silver lamps, all this detail. On every altar, the priests waved the censers, while the bride and the bridegroom joined their hands and received the blessing of the bishop. The little mermaid, dressed in silk and gold, held up the bride's train, but her ears heard nothing of the festive music, and her eyes saw not the holy ceremony. She thought of the night of death which was coming to her, and of all she had lost in the world. On the same evening, the bride and bridegroom went on board ship. Cannons were roaring, flags waving, and in the center of the ship, a costly tent of purple and gold. Wow, that's a big ship, isn't it? That's like a cruise liner. I'm trying to imagine a ship this big. Dang, it's like a ship big enough that it's got a freaking tent pitched. A costly tent of purple and gold had been erected. It contained elegant couches for the reception of the bridal pair during the night. The ship, with swelling sails and a favorable wind, glided away smoothly and lightly over the calm sea. When it grew dark, a number of colored lamps were lit, and the sailors danced merrily on the deck. The little mermaid could not help thinking of her first rising out of the sea, when she had seen similar festivities and joys, and she joined in the dance, poised herself in the air as a swallow when he pursues his prey, and all at present cheered her with wonder. She had never danced so elegantly before. Her tender feet felt as if cut with sharp knives, but she cared not for it. A sharper pain had been pierced through her heart. She knew this was the last evening she should ever see the prince, for whom she had forsaken her kindred and her home. She'd given up her beautiful voice and suffered unheard of pain daily for him, while he knew nothing of it. This was the last evening that she would breathe the same air with him, or gaze on the starry sky and the deep sea. An eternal night without a thought or dream awaited her. She had no soul, and now she would never win one. All was joy and gaiety on board ship till long after midnight. She laughed and danced with the rest, while the thoughts of death were in her heart. The prince kissed his beautiful bride while she played with his raven hair, till they went arm in arm to rest in the splendid tent. Then all became still on board the ship. The helmsman, alone awake, stood at the helm. The little mermaid leaned her white arms on the edge of the vessel and looked towards the east for the first blush of morning, for that first ray of dawn that would bring her death. She saw her sisters rising out of the flood. They were as pale as herself, but their long, beautiful hair waved no more in the wind and had been cut off. Sorry, I read that wrong. Waved no more in the wind and had been cut off. We have given our hair to the witch, said they, to obtain help for you, that you may not die tonight. She has given us a knife. Here it is. See, it is very sharp. Before the sun rises, you must plunge it into the heart of the prince. When the warm blood falls upon your feet, they will grow together again and form into a fish's tail, and you will once more be a mermaid and return to us to live out your 300 years before you die and change into the salt sea foam. Haste then, or he or you must die before sunrise. Our old grandmother moans so for you that her white hair is falling off from sorrow as ours fell under the witch's scissors. Kill the prince and come back. Hasten. Do you not see the first red streaks in the sky? In a few minutes the sun will rise, and you must die." And they sighed deeply and mournfully and sank beneath the waves. I mean, goodness gracious. Now, we won't get into, okay, why is it she had to give up her voice, her tongue, to get her legs, and they needed only give up their hair? I mean, that's still a big deal. But look, they're going, look, we miss you. Your grandmother misses you. We mourn for you. We want you back. We've sacrificed our hair, our beauty, to a degree, to get this knife that if you sacrifice his life, he's chosen another woman, right? How messed up is that? He didn't choose you. End his life, and you get to have yours. You get to have your old life back. Now, it doesn't say anything about her getting her tongue back, but she at least gets to live out her days with her family. The little mermaid drew back the crimson curtain of the tent and beheld the fair bride with her head resting on the prince's breast. She bent down and kissed his fair brow, then looked at the sky on which the rosy dawn grew brighter and brighter. Then she glanced at the sharp knife and again fixed her eyes on the prince, who whispered the name of his bride in his dreams. She was in his thoughts, and the knife trembled in the hand of the little mermaid. So right there, I mean, it's kind of the thing. There's that love, there's that affection for him, there's that longing to be with him, and he whispers the name of the bride, like of his bride, the one who he truly loves, who his heart belongs to now. She was in his thoughts, and the knife trembled. So it's almost, you can imagine it being a lot of emotion. There's probably some anger in there, probably some bitterness, but grief and a plethora of other things that is trembling as she's preparing to do this. Then she flung it far away from her into the waves. The water turned red where it fell, and the drops that spurted up looked like blood. She cast one more lingering, half-fainting glance at the prince, then threw herself from the ship into the sea and thought her body was dissolving into foam. The sun rose above the waves, and his warm rays fell on the cold foam of the little mermaid, who did not feel as if she was dying. She saw the bright sun, and all around her floated hundreds of transparent, beautiful beings. She could see through them the white sails of the ship and the red clouds in the sky. Their speech was melodious, but too ethereal to be heard by mortal ears, as they were also unseen by mortal eyes. The little mermaid perceived that she had a body like theirs, and that she continued to rise higher and higher out of the foam. "Where am I?" asked she, and her voice sounded ethereal as the voice of those who were with her. No earthly music could imitate it. "Among the daughters of the air," answered one of them. "A mermaid has not an immortal soul, nor can she obtain one unless she wins the love of a human being. On the power of another hangs her eternal destiny. But the daughters of the air, although they do not possess an immortal soul, can, by their good deeds, procure one for themselves. We fly to warm countries, and cool the sultry air that destroys mankind with the pestilence. We carry the perfume of flowers to spread health and restoration. After we have striven for 300 years to all the good in our power, we receive an immortal soul and take part in the happiness of mankind. You, poor little mermaid, have tried with your whole heart to do as we are doing. You have suffered and endured and raised yourself to the spirit world by your good deeds, and now, by striving for 300 years in the same way, you may obtain an immortal soul." The little mermaid lifted her glorified eyes towards the sun and felt them, for the first time, filling with tears. On the ship in which she had left the prince, there were life and noise. She saw him and his beautiful bride searching for her. Sorrowfully, they gazed the pearly foam as if they knew she had thrown herself into the waves. Unseen, she kissed the forehead of her bride and fanned the prince, and then mounted with the other children of the air to a rosy cloud that floated through the ether. "After 300 years, thus shall we float into the kingdom of heaven," said she, "and we may even get there sooner," whispered one of her companions. "Unseen, we can enter the houses of men, where there are children, and for every day on which we find a good child, who is the joy of his parents and deserves their love, our time of prohibition is shortened. The child does not know, when we fly through the room, that we smile with joy at his good conduct, for we can count 1 year less of our 300 years. But when we see a naughty or wicked child, we shed tears of sorrow, and for every tear a day is added to our time of trial." The end. Now, I would say it fumbles the ending a little bit, because it gets a little heavy-handed, if we're going to be honest. But the idea of this, she is given a chance, and how many times in our modern day, my gosh, is murder, is harm justified because somebody is jilted, because somebody doesn't get what they want, because things don't go the way that they want. That, you know what, screw you. If you're not into me, screw you. And I'm not talking about just women. I'm men and women for a myriad of different issues. You know what? I'm not going to get my way. You're not doing what I want. Well, screw you. I'm going to get mine. That selflessness, that bitterness, that resentment. And I love the fact that the we'll just call them angels, because that's kind of what they seem to be. The angels point out that you did sacrifice, that you were there for him, that you did pour out yourself to him, and as much as you possibly could, you did everything you could selflessly to be with him. And it didn't go your way. But because of that, and ultimately, I think it was that act of her going, you could have this back. You could kind of get your old life back to a degree, but you have to kill this man that you love, who you love. But you're not going to be with him anyway, right? What do you care? So anyway, it's man, I'm really starting to fade here, but to me, it's a very beautiful thing. Like, I don't know if you could tell. Like, I mean, there is a little bit of emotional stirring there, like just that. Like, and I don't think the moral of the story or the point of the story is women, suffer in silence and do everything the guy wants and call it all good. Because again, that circumstance only arose because of the pursuit of, because she intertwined her fate with evil, with wickedness. But as we know, even if she could have spoken, it may not have changed. Like I said, I don't know if her being mute or dumb was a factor in the fact that and the reason why he couldn't marry her, but for however it went down, his heart was for somebody else. She reminded him of that woman, but she was not her. And that they actually find a love. Now, before I want to conclude with this part of the story, but let's compare that with the Disney's version here, because this is again where things go very, very, very screwy. So we have her trying to get the prince to fall in love with her. And, you have the hilarity ensues, all the shenanigans, and, they go on again, the date, kiss the girl, doesn't happen. The witch, kind of looks like Ariel, just with, darker hair, and enchants the prince, gets his eyes away from Ariel. And now she kind of has to go on this kind of like, win back the prince. He breaks the spell, but the sun sets and Ariel is, at the last minute, she turns back into a fish before anything can happen. And she's taken overboard. Titan says, give me my daughter back. And we're not going to see it, but she holds up the contract that Ariel signed. There we go. Okay, well, he does, and there we go. Now she's starting to turn into that. And you can see that. So here's the thing. This is where, again, for me, the deviation does not do the story justice. She makes a very foolish decision. She turns to witchcraft to get what she wants. It doesn't work out. The cost of that is now her living the rest of her life as a little algae polyp thing. And certainly don't want that to be her fate, but that is the natural consequence of doing this. And yes, the witch does do some shenanigans. In the original story, there's no nefarious stuff. In the original story, there's a purity of it wasn't meant to be. However and why ever things worked out, it was not meant to be. The prince ends up with the one who he loves and the one who loves him, and they live happily ever after. This was not the place for the mermaid to be. She was meant to be under the sea. Here we have the witch interacting. And so instead of it just being, this was not a good plan from the beginning, this now becomes a bad plan because the witch interacts. And that's okay. I mean, again, functionally for the story, I get it. But the consequence of her embracing the witchcraft, going on this taking this ridiculous idea, forsaking all that she knows to try to get, this fantasy life, it results in this consequence. But who pays for it? We start to see her transform, but what are we going to see the dad do? Naturally, dad takes the fall. And, you can't really blame him, and you don't think poorly of him at the same. But then you go, okay, you were kind of what was holding the witch at bay. You are in charge. You are a custodian. You are responsible for the entirety of the ocean. Not Ariel, you. You give that up, you're screwed. Like now you were giving all your daughters, all your other daughters, all the other people, your merfolk and the creatures and everything. Now you were giving them, you're putting them under the dominion of this horrible witch. So you can understand as a father, someone who does love his daughter. It's a very, very, very powerful moment for him to make that decision that despite her screwing up, despite her errors and everything, he's going to take the fall, but it is still him taking responsibility for her actions. And so that's the end of the story, right? That would be the end of the story. Okay, now the witch rules, and probably Ariel, who knows what's going to happen to her now, but her dad took the fall for her foolish mistakes, for her rebellion. Her dad pays a price. Now you could say there's some, Savior, Jesus kind of allegory type thing there, but that's not what this is meant to be. So it's a little bit skewed, but we won't go too far than that. Anyway, so now once she's already spared the consequence of her actions. This is the action. This is what should have happened to her. The life that she is now. I mean, she saw it. She saw what happened. She knew the witch had ways to screw a lot of mer people. By the way, these are her people too. She's a princess. Doesn't she care about them? Anyway, there's a way that the queen the witch had to screw all those people out of the deal. Doesn't care, makes the deal anyway, pays the price. Now, Ursula, and now her dad is forced to more or less, or decides to make that sacrifice for her. Not a consequence of her actions, or not facing the consequence of her actions. It's his. He's the one who does that. And then now, of course, Ursula becomes crazy big and whatever. And now, so there's Ariel just going, okay, going to be killed by the witch. It looks like, I'm guessing that I'm trying to remember. But what happens? Eric. Come on, get there. We're not going to see the actual moment of impact, but he sacrifices himself to kill the Sea Witch. So, and I mean, and so we have the whole thing where it looks like he's dead, and everybody gets returned to life, and there he is on the beach. And now Titan turns her legs, or her fins, back into legs, and she gets the prince, and all is good. Here's the problem. It's called Little Mermaid. It's supposed to be about this Little Mermaid. We have the father stepping up big, willing to sacrifice for his daughter. Character growth there. And we even see it here when he says, okay, I'm gonna now I will admit now here that this is just now occurring to me. Apparently they never say it in the movie. And I think this is one of the downsides to it. If there was a line or an exchange where she's like, Daddy, you could we would never get there because he's saying you can't be with a human, or even have correspondence with a human. But if we knew at the beginning that he had the power to make her a human being, that does change things a little bit, because now the only way to usurp the natural order isn't to go evil. Her dad could do it if she could just persuade him that it was a good thing to do and that it was the right thing to do, which she never would do. She's not going to get him organically. There's no way to get him from don't interact with humans. Hey, you saved one. That sucks. One less human would have been great. You're not going to get somebody from that disposition to, okay, well, you can go off. It's Eric's sacrifice that kind of proves out to Triton that, okay, maybe my daughter will be in good hands after all with this guy. And again, Eric proving himself. I'm coming to the rescue. I'm going to save you. I'm going to kill this abomination that became about only because you made a stupid deal with this crazy lady. So where is Ariel's sacrifice? Where is the consequence? As I said at the beginning, this is the beginning of the story is a foolishness, an obsession with a life that she can't have, engaging in evil things and with a witch to get what she thinks she wants, or what, arguably what she does want. But for whether it's because of outside interference or just the way life goes, it doesn't work out. As we can all vouch. I think we can all understand. We've all been in a place where things just don't work out. Nobody's at fault. Nobody's wrong. It just doesn't work out for us. Somebody else gets the happy ending. It wasn't our story, whether it's a job or a relationship. But however it turns out, it doesn't work out. And the consequence of that in our story here is she would become Seafoam. She loses her life and it's a done deal. But she actually does things. She actually proves out her character, her heart. And even though she's not getting what she wants, she is able to show that she still does have true love for him, true loyalty for him, truly wants what's best for him, that she celebrates. She's celebrating at the wedding that is her death, that is bringing her death, but she still dances with all of her heart, and she still has that selflessness there. And again, I'm not trying to, promote, any kind of abuse thing, or a woman just kind of taking it and just giving it all for the guy. But that's how this story happened to play out there. And it's like, and we get to see her character. We get to see what she is sacrificing, even in the dancing that is celebrating this. We know she's in great pain and agony, but she still bears it because she is happy that they have found each other. She's happy that the man she loves has found happiness. That's like the core thing when we talk about in romances, that I just want you to be happy. And this is it manifesting out to its fullness. And she doesn't get the guy. It's not lip service. She doesn't say, well, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me. No, that's really what matters to her. And at the very end, when she's given a chance to say, you know what, you can kind of get your life back if you're willing to kill this guy who is never going to be yours. He's chosen somebody else. It's not going to be you, but you can redeem it if you just kill him. I mean, kill him and then jump in the water and you're good to go. And her sister seemed to be okay with that. And who knows, maybe her grandmother too, because, it sounds like she kind of was aware of what's going on, but who knows? Anyway, they're advocating for it. And she's like, no, the very love that has, brought me to do all this, there's no way I'm going to stab him. I'm going to, that my life is not worth his. Like, I'm not going to claim his life. He's not going to pay the price for my mistakes, for my decisions. You see, there is an accountability that she has. There is her owning up to the decisions she made. And the consequence of that is you don't get what you want. And it's a tragedy. But because of that sacrifice, because of those things, there is a redemptive element to the story. It is a tragedy, but she does get what she ultimately wanted. I mean, she wanted to be with him, but she also, the big focus became having that soul. So she does get that over time as a redemptive arc, as a redemptive end. So to me, it's not a tragedy per se. She didn't get all that she wanted, but she does get what her heart was really after, what prompted her. Because, when she was, she was pining over him, that's not when she went to the witch. She went to the witch when she found out the only way she could get a soul is to be with him. So that's what prompted her to make that move. So there is, she has developed as a character. She has proven herself to be of pure heart and to be this wonderful, amazing, loving companion of his, despite the fact that it's not going to be reciprocated. And she's able to ultimately take responsibility for her choice and say, okay, I'm not going to put this off on this guy. I'm not going to kill him because I put myself in this situation. It's not up to him to fix my mistake. And I love him. So no, I'm not going to kill him. And throws the knife away. And that provides the opportunity for redemption. But what do we get in the movie? This is no longer cautionary tale of rebellious girl rebellious person. It has nothing to do with her being a woman, but a rebellious person, really bad, knowingly, willingly bad decision. Things don't work out. Big surprise. Making a deal with a witch doesn't go well. And though she certainly does not, she does call out for her dad when she's being turned into the little amoeba thing or whatever it is, the algae. She does call out for her dad, which, there's nothing wrong with, but that's, tugs at the heartstrings. She didn't say, no, daddy, no, I don't think. I can't have the volume on this, but I'm pretty sure she doesn't tell him not to do it. But let's just say she did. Let's just give her the benefit of the doubt. It's still, no, you know what? Well, okay, we'll leave that ambiguous. I'm pretty sure I remember she didn't say, don't do it, Dad, but you put him in a really tough situation. And now, understandably, you got to say he's going to take responsibility for his actions as well, his decision as well. But he is having to make a decision that as a father would just be horrible. You know, like, okay, do I just say, okay, my daughter's going to be this thing forever? I mean, that's that. And so it shows his heart, his love for his daughter. He can't bear that. No matter what she's done, he can't bear for that to be her fate. And he makes a decision. Now she's no longer a consequence of that. Now the fate that was set aside for her and her foolishness is passed on to her father. Now, granted, she doesn't make that. She doesn't kill him. Ursula doesn't say, well, if you sign your dad's name, then he'll take your place. Her father agrees to do it, but he's put in that situation by her actions. And then, now with him out of the way, now they can both be killed and Ursula can rule the world. And now now Eric, now again, he has a choice. He can help or not. I don't know. He probably would have died anyway. So he's kind of fighting for his own life, but he has to go in there and put his life on the line. Now he does survive, obviously, but that was not a given. That was this whole ending sequence. This whole third act comes about because of her decision. So look at the whole story in total. You look at the original. She doesn't get what she wanted, but because of her nobility of character and her love, she is given a chance at redemption to get what her heart really truly wanted, which is that eternal soul. And she forsook putting the consequence of her actions on somebody else, knowing that was probably going to result in her death. That's the story. In a nutshell, that is our story there, and her arc and her growth as a character and what the story tells us. I think it does still very much go caution. Hey, yeah, no, don't try to leave. Like, don't try to chase a counterfeit life. Don't try to chase something that you can't have. Don't consult with evil to make that happen. If you do, things aren't going to turn out well for you, but there's still redemption. There's still hope for you. Little Mermaid, the Disney version, make a really stupid choice, rebelling against what your dad says. And she has no authority on this. It's not like she's like, we know there are good and bad people. Her dad's not wrong. She's not wrong. But this is a father protective. We see how protective of it. He's willing to give up his life essentially for his daughter. We know he is doing what he's doing out of protection. And yes, he may be wrong. He may have, he may be trying to protect her from things that he doesn't fully understand, but that is his heart. That is his desire. And so, yes, he comes across as strong. And I'm not justifying that, but I also don't think that makes him a bad father. I don't think that makes it justified for her to rebel and go, okay, well, now I'm going to go to a witch to get what I want. And discounting all the warning signs and all the things that say, this is not going to go well for you. I want what I want. I'm going to go for it. What are the consequences that she faces? What does she have to give? What does she have to put on the line in order to have this happily ever after? Her dad steps in for her to spare her that fate. And then her fiance or lover steps in to save them all from being destroyed. And then her dad at the end goes, yep, okay, well, she should get what she wants. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or that's, that he shouldn't have done that, but what is the takeaway here? What's the takeaway from the story? Make a bad decision and get what you want. And other people will step in and put themselves at risk for you so that you can ultimately get what you want. And again, this isn't malicious at Ariel and saying, oh, she wanted that. Would she have actually asked her father to give up, to trade himself for her? Would she have asked Eric to sacrifice himself for her? No, but she was not in a position to dictate anything at that point. So to me, it was just very, as an adult watching that going, what is our takeaway here? What journey has Ariel gone on? What growth has she had as a person, as a character? How has she changed? It's called The Little Mermaid. It's supposed to be about her. How has she proven that she is different than before? Where have we seen her go, I was wrong. I should never have done this. This was a mistake. I belong with my father. Let me go back to my father. Let me go. I don't want, this was wrong. Like, where was that character development? Where was that understanding? Where was I'm going to take responsibility for my actions. I'm going to take responsibility for how things went down. Where is that element? And that's where I, as an adult, went, I don't think and I'm not saying that this was Disney's messaging. I'm not saying there was an agenda behind it. I am saying that the indication it gives you is not one of caution. It doesn't say, careful, this is not going to end the way you want it to. I'm seeing bad decisions, and other people will fix it for you so that you get everything that you wanted. And I mean, you could say that's cynical and everything, but that was, I mean, I when I started watching this, I was rooting for it. And I will tell you this though, as we wrap up here, because I'm just about done. It was not even 4 hours, not a big deal at all. Part of what got my mind working this direction, there was a movie called The Incredible Mr. Limpet. And let me see if I can pull this up here. We'll hide this. Yoink. Oh, there we go. The Incredible Mr. Limpet. 1964. Don Knotts. I love Don Knotts. Don Knotts is a great actor. I love him growing up. Can we make this bigger? I don't think so. Oh, yes, we can. There we go. Pretty much in a nutshell, it's the story of a guy, Mr. Limpet, who spends his time fantasizing about living in the water. So it's almost the inverse of The Little Mermaid. He spends all his time fantasizing about being in the water. He has a fish tank. He just his imagination goes crazy, and he pretends that he's a fish, or he wants to be a fish. He's obsessed with being a fish, with being underwater. Not happy with being on the land. He's always about being in the water. Problem is also, he's married. And his wife, who is presented, watching this as a kid, I was like, man, she's a meanie weenie. But in real life, it's his wife going, I'm being neglected. You spend all your time in this fantasy world. What about me? What about our relationship? Like, he's absent-minded. He doesn't listen to her. He doesn't pay attention. He's completely distracted by this whole being under the water thing and living under the water. So he's neglected his marriage. And, again, she's made to look like harsh. But when you look at it, watching it as an adult, that's the thing. As a kid, I love this movie. Love this movie. Thought it was cool. Love Don Knotts. Love the animation. Love the little crab. I got a thing for crabs, apparently. Oh, dear. That doesn't sound right. And anyway, loved the movie. But then I went back and actually watched it with a friend of mine, a gal pal, who I was introducing to the movie. I was like, yeah, I remember watching this kid. It's a little campy, but it's kind of fun. And I got more and more uncomfortable as the movie went on, because it was really pretty sick, because it was just, my wife, whatever. I care more about the fish. I'm more about the ocean. It's not my head are in the clouds. My head is underwater. Like, he was neglecting his marriage, neglecting his wife. I can't remember how, but he becomes a fish. That's, you can see him there. The animated him. Whoop, whoop. And he ends up living under the water. He meets Ladyfish. That's her name, Ladyfish. It's a pink version of him, essentially. Falls in love. And, there's some adventures or whatever that goes on. But the end of the movie is his wife, and it's animated. That's what happens. Once he goes under the sea, once he falls in and turns into a fish, it's all animated. And so above the water, live action, under the water, animated. But at the very end, his wife is taken out on a boat to meet him, and he's got his head above the water, and he's like, goodbye, I'm here with my ladyfish. We're going to live together. And his wife's like, okay, well, I guess, she's very amicable about it, but like, well, I guess you got to live your life, and what makes you happy. Goodbye. And, very, very nice about it from her perspective. But I'm like, what messed up movie is this? Living in a fantasy world, neglecting your wife, neglecting responsibilities and everything to want to be in a place that you can never be, have a life that you can't have, and then through just some bizarre circumstance, you end up turning into it. You cheat on there was no intercourse as far as I know, but you find yourself a ladyfish and say, all right, goodbye. Like, I'm just going to live my life down here in this fantasy world with my new fantasy lady. And I was like, that's not cool. That is not cool. And I think we turned the movie off, because I was getting embarrassed. I was like, okay, this is not what I remembered it as. And so it was the same thing when I watched The Little Mermaid. It was just this idea of like, why are we indulging in this? I want to live in a fantasy where I want to be somewhere else and have a completely different life that I really can't feasibly have. But through movie magic, or in this case, witchcraft, now I have the chance to do that. And when it doesn't work out, the only way it's going to have a happy ending is if other people step in and save my bacon. And so it just didn't sit well with me. And, Beauty and the Beast came out afterwards. And on the whole, I thought it was a much better story. But there were two elements in that kind of stank of this a little bit. And that was, the line Belle is singing, there goes the baker with his tray like always, the same old bread and loaves to sell. What do you do, Belle? You're speaking derogatorily about the baker who's creating sustenance for the village. I want much more than this provincial life. Provincial doesn't mean crappy life. It just means, it's a normal everyday life. I want more. Again, same thing as Ariel. I want more. I want better. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I am not satisfied with this. And then you dismiss functioning people of society that are actually providing something. The same old bread and loaves to sell. Oh, how tiresome. All he's doing is providing bread for people to eat. What are you doing, Belle? You read a book. You're literate. Congratulations. What are you contributing to the community? What are you contributing to the society? You just walk around, as they say, with your nose stuck in a book. You live your life in a fantasy world. You're not contributing to anything. You're leeching off of the rest of the people. Where's your contribution? You could be baking same old bread and loaves. You could be helping your dad, but no, you're reading your stupid book. You're not helping anybody. And yet you speak with disdain about this provincial life. That did not sit well with me. And then the whole, she's in with the beast, and he says, you can go anywhere. You are my prisoner, but you don't have to stay in the dungeon. You don't have to stay in your room. You can be in the kitchen. This is a freaking palace. You can be anywhere in the palace except the West Wing. What's in the West Wing? Stay out of the West Wing. Okay, whatever it is, that's you. That's your personal space. You should be entitled to your personal space. I'm here. I said I would take the place of my dad, a prisoner. You're allowing me to have run of the castle with the exception of this one area. I'll take what I can get. That should be enough for me. No, I need my curiosity supersedes your direct wishes. You want me to stay away from it. That doesn't matter. I need my curiosity satiated. I'm going to go to that wing. And we don't know ultimately if she had touched the roads with the petals of wilted or whatever, but it's close enough to ruining his life forever, making him a beast forever. He's freaked the heck out. He's angry. Why didn't you listen to me? Get out, get out. And she runs off, gets herself in the, and I'm not saying that, his explosive anger was the right thing to do necessarily. I think it's understandable. I think it's very understandable. And he doesn't swipe at her. Now, if he tried to kill her, if he actually tried to attack her, then I go, okay, yeah, you need to get out of there. And that's a bridge too far. But, he was throwing stuff, but it wasn't at her. He was angry, but he was not trying to harm her. She runs out. He has to save her life, gets all torn up in the process. And when they come to this, it comes to a head, he's like, you shouldn't have gone to the West Wing. And I can't remember. It goes back and forth, and she's like, and it ends with her going, well, you shouldn't have lost your temper. No. Let's go back to this. Not that she says, thank you for saving my life. That's good. I am so sorry. Now, I know she said that when he was angry because she's going, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, what are you sorry for? You're not sorry. You chose to do that. This wasn't a mistake. You didn't end up in the West Wing by mistake. You sought it out on purpose. You purposely went to the West Wing knowing this is not where you were supposed to go. So how can you say you're sorry for going? You're sorry for getting caught. You're sorry he's reacting in this way. You're sorry that he's not happy, but you're not sorry that you went. Otherwise you wouldn't have done it. You chose, your curiosity was more important than him saying, don't go there. So it was just, and then she shuts him up by saying, well, you shouldn't have lost your temper. It's like, so where's the accountability for you doing this? Now, to me, it's not horribly egregious, but it's still kind of like, eh. So all that to say, I as much as I love these growing up as a kid, and I can still watch Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. There's plenty of movies. Lion King. There's some great movies. Little Mermaid to me was an outlier. And unfortunately, though, that is one that gets heralded a lot. Now, there are people that, if you've got to this point, first of all, holy cow, 3.5 hours, almost, well, it'll be 4 hours by the time I'm done, I'm sure. Like, that's amazing. I thank you for watching for so long. But, well, not but, and, but if you are somebody, if you're somebody, typically a gal, who grew up with Little Mermaid, loves Little Mermaid, I'm not here to tell you should hate The Little Mermaid. I'm not here to tell you that it's a horrible movie, it's the worst thing ever, and it's bad, and you're a bad person for liking it. None of that. I think in this case, we saw an adaptation, and unlike Snow White, and I would argue probably most of the initial Disney princess movies that Walt had a hand in producing, they were altered, they were updated, they were adapted to make them work in a visual medium, in animation. They were not fundamentally changed. They were not gutted or altered in a way that really changed kind of almost the whole message, the whole point of them. But we have now this huge gap. Now we have Disney 1989 or 1987 or whenever they started doing it. And now we're taking the source and we're removing literally the soul of it, and we're changing it so that even though we say, okay, yeah, we want the premise, we want this whole premise of a little mermaid under the sea that, wants to explore the world and falls in love with this prince and wants to be a part of that world and this whole thing. But instead of it ending as a cautionary tale and saying, well, yes, that's all well and good, but this is not the way you go about it. This is not how things turn out, that you don't just get to, alter reality and lose yourself in that and go through witchcraft and all that kind of stuff to get what you want. It's not going to work out for you, but there is redemption. This is a mistake. There are ways to redeem it. I'm not pretending to say that I know how they could have done the original in a way that would have also worked as a story. I think it could have been done. I almost kind of would like to see an adaptation. Maybe there is one, but a more faithful adaptation. Doesn't have to have everything in there, but like especially like with the bloody shoes and everything, the knives and the feet. I mean, I kind of like what it was saying, or it seems to be saying about this whole like beauty, but with great pain, the pride with great pain, and the whole thing about not being able to cry. Like there's some cool stuff in there, but there would be some stuff I would still leave out. But I think the idea of that love that she has and that character development that she has, that we completely lose in the Disney version. We don't get any of that. And instead of having a redemption story, we get a thing where we just watch other people take the fall for her, and it all works out in the end for her. It's really no problem. Yeah, I think there's enough of a deviation that I go, you know what? I think in a way, at least on that movie, for me personally, I think Disney lost its way. And I think where we are now, the seeds of where we are now, where Disney is now, I mean, maybe you love Disney. And so you have no problem with it. But I think for a lot of folks, they're not really recognizing the Disney that was there. I would say The Little Mermaid was kind of like a halfway point. It had strayed away from what it was originally. It wasn't full blown where we're at now, but it was a step in that direction. And yeah, and as a guy, going, okay, guys protect, like that's what we do. Her father, I don't know. I still, it's hard to say, man. It's like, wow, okay, well, either my daughters and everybody else in the sea probably gets killed and lives under the tyranny of this evil witch, or I have to give up my daughter who made some really bad decisions and disobeyed me. And he wouldn't do it out of spite, certainly, but go, I'm sorry, I can't, so I could see that, but I think having him be the protective father and giving up himself for that is very understandable and is very powerful for him as a character. And then of course, Eric, again, engaging in the protector vibe. I have no problem with those happening, but you want to see some accountability on the other side of it, particularly with how all the things went down. And I would almost suffice to say, if they just made the witch not a witch, Or, I mean, she was a witch, but they presented her as something else so that Ariel was deceived. Ariel was tricked into thinking she could do this. And the witch seemed to be on her side. And the witch was saying, and there were no warning signs. It was just all like, hey, but I have to do this because of whatever, but you can do, like, again, complete deception. And she'd want to believe it. She would want to believe it. And that, and it wasn't necessarily overtly like witchcraft. It was just kind of like, well, we're going to, I don't know what you would say, but like, make it less obvious on the nose that this is a bad idea. And then you could say, okay, she made some mistakes and she went to some, she shouldn't have gone out of her way. And that whole, I want to live in a completely different world that I can't actually live in. I don't know. I'm losing my mind at this point. I need to end this. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. I will say, as I was finishing up, I do kind of wish they didn't go heavy-handed. The fact that the last line of it isn't that she was able to ascend up with the angels, and that she said goodbye to the prince and the princess, kind of as her first act as this angelic being, and ascended to begin her time of a penance, if you will, or of earning her soul. But the fact they're like, you got here because of your good deeds, and you do more good deeds, and you get to go to heaven. And if you for all the children who happen to be reading this story or having it read to them, if you are a blessing to your parents and you make them happy and you're a good person, then these angelic beings get a year off of their 300 years. So be good. It's taking, every time, what is it? So every time something happens, an angel gets its wings, where it seemed to be more like when a light goes up or something. I don't remember what it is, but it's something just organically happening. If this event happens, it means that an angel got its wings. This is like, literally, you can give an angel its wings early by being a good person. It just came in a little heavy-handed, on the whole do good deeds thing. So I probably would leave that part out, or maybe work it in there in a less heavy-handed way, and just leave it with her saying goodbye to the prince and goodbye to the princess, and ascending up, and just knowing that when the time comes, she will have that soul that she wanted so much. I think that would have been a fitting way to end the fairy tale. So I think Disney could have told a story that was more true to the original and still had a happy ending, but they went with, I think I've said enough about it. It was just a different way to go. And as an adult, personally, maybe I'm jaded by my own experiences. It's quite possible. Or I'm seeing the lens, seeing it through the opposite of rose tinted glasses, but without thinking about that, like literally just sitting down and going, oh, cool. I want to relive the magic. I want to see what, I want to watch this story again. And I had the same reaction that I had to this. And that's also to say, that's not about a woman doing this stuff. It's not the fact that, oh, she's a girl and she's getting away with all this stuff. It was almost arguably worse with Mr. Limpet. I couldn't even finish it. I think I actually finished The Little Mermaid. I couldn't even finish Limpet because it's like, dude, like, that's not cool, man. Like, it's obnoxious in every way, and it's twisted in how it ends. And again, what it's saying, like, how am I supposed to be uplifted by this guy? Like, somehow that he fantasizes so much about this other world that he's able to forsake his wife, forsake his life, go live under the sea in this weird twist of whatever, and finds a new woman, Lady Fish, and lives happily ever after while his wife is left going, okay, what the hell just happened? Like, that's not cool. So it cuts both ways, I guess is what I'm saying. But anyway, I am going to do something really quick here. I guess we'll go. Okay, there we go. So if you look up here, I am putting a link, first time I'm trying to do this, to the Snow White 1800s version. So we kind of do what we did here. It's more like just going through the story itself. I didn't compare it to the new Snow White. There's a second movie or a second video that does, after we cover the 1819 edition, Then we talk about the 1937 edition and how it compares. So that one is more similar to what we've got going on here. But the first one lays the groundwork and introduces you to the original story. So if you want to check that out, it's right up there. If you have watched this long or even skipped through it, I appreciate your time and your patience. This has turned out to be longer than I thought, but I knew the story was going to be a lot to chew. And I don't know that I articulated myself as well as I would have liked, but such is the breaks. Anyway, thanks so much and take care.